In a world of demons and warriors, the Demon King stands as the undisputed leader. Warriors, backed by the Empire, exist solely to defeat him, while the Demon King's purpose is to stop them. During a fierce battle, explosions erupt everywhere. One of the warriors plans a rear attack, but the Demon King has his own loyal servants. A small, pink-haired girl steps forward, vowing to protect the weaker ones. The warriors immediately recognize them as the commanders. Among them is a formidable red-haired girl, one of 12 commanders led by the Demon King's most powerful ally. They advance, and a long-haired man cuts down a warrior as the story reveals that even invincible warriors existed. However, one such invincible warrior met his end at the hands of the commander of the Zero Corps, known as the Demon Arut. He was the king's secret weapon, his most precious talent. Suddenly, a letter of resignation falls onto the king's desk. "What is this?" he demands. The white-haired young man, Dion Hart, declares he is leaving. The king's pen explodes in his hand. What is the meaning of this? Papers fly and hit the young man's face. The king, enraged, demands to know how he could turn his back on him. Then, just as suddenly, the king falls to his knees, hugging Dion's legs, begging him not to leave. "You can't abandon me. Why are you doing this?" Dion seems unwilling to talk. The king presses on, asking what's wrong with the castle. "Did someone disrespect you? Was it prejudice because you're human?" The king refuses to accept it. Dion, despite being human, is his most powerful asset, with power that surpasses everyone else, making others feel nothing but envy. He was the ultimate trump card, unchallenged by all. Dion replies that no one did anything wrong. The king demands an explanation, but Dion interrupts. "Are you going to kill me?" Startled, the king insists he would never. He has many subordinates, but he would never harm the boy. He shakes him, asking if it's because he hasn't been sent to the battlefield. As Dion starts to speak, blood drips from his nose. In a panic, the Demon King screams for the doctors. Later, a female healer uses magic on Dion as the king asks for a status report. The doctor, Ben, states the obvious: he is suffering from the battles he's fought. His body can't take it anymore. The king warns him not to repeat what he already knows and to find a cure, or face the consequences. Ben understands. The Demon King orders Dion to return and focus on his recovery. They rush Dion to his room and lay him on a bed. Whispers fill the air around him. Some say the general is about to die, others recall how he blocked a warrior's explosion, and is as strong as the king himself. They all considered him a blessing. But Dion only thinks, "I'm screwed." All he ever wanted was a comfortable, retired life, but everyone keeps fabricating stories about his power. They believe he's a mighty warrior, but to him, it's all a joke. The doctors bow and leave, telling him to rest. Alone, Dion, also known as Arut, reflects that he isn't as talented as they imagine. A maid comes to collect his medicine cup. He places it on her tray, but she fumbles slightly. He tells her she can leave. The girl leaves happily, murmuring that his hand touched hers, while he thinks she must truly hate him, feeling repulsed by the touch of a human. The only one who seems to genuinely care is the Demon King, who always orders food and care for him, though he often goes overboard. Dion is a human in the demon realm, born with a fragile body that collapses under the slightest stress. Through a series of misunderstandings, everyone believes he is immensely powerful, and he even became the commander of the strongest demon corps. He's been using his poor health as an excuse to avoid battles, but he knows that the moment they discover his weakness, he'll be cut in half. He sits up in alarm. "I can't stay in this castle much longer. None of these demons have a heart." He needs to find a place where he can live in peace and safety. Just then, someone named Ed enters the room. "I heard you returned from the human realm," Dion says. "Yes," Ed replies, "and I brought you this mirror of reflection to play with." Ed is one of the few demons Dion feels comfortable around, as he always brings him things from the human world. But Ed looks worried. "I heard you collapsed," he says. "What do you need to recover?" Dion thinks that this must be some kind of reincarnation, concluding that, in the end, everything is his fault. Ed, however, insists that's not the case. It's thanks to him facing that warrior that all the demons are still alive. But Dion tries to explain that wasn't what happened. At this, Ed declares he will torture all humans until he finds a method to cure him. Dion realizes that, at the end of the day, everyone here is a demon. His friend tells him to rest and says goodbye. Dion is left thinking that at least Ed is the only person who genuinely cares about him. The king also seemed to care, and tried to keep him safe. He just hopes Ed doesn't misinterpret the situation, and do something stupid. Back with the king, he rereads the boy's resignation letter, wondering what he was thinking. It's impossible to read his expression, because he doesn't have one. However, it's undeniable that he has been this way since the moment they met. He remembers the first time he saw him, after Dion had defeated the warrior. The demons commented that he had finished off the human to stop his self-explosion. At that moment, the king saw an interesting gift from the Empire and asked for his name. He was amazed by the boy's loyalty, throwing himself onto the battlefield like that. He couldn't understand why he was sent to such a dangerous place. The king learns his name and thinks that if he had someone so strong as an ally, he would never send them to a meaningless death. So, he offers him a position in the army. The king knows he has been protecting the boy well, but he can't just keep sending him on risky missions. He looks at one of the pages and seems to get an idea. He immediately summons all the commanders for an important meeting, thinking this will make the boy happy. However, the boy is trembling in his bed. In a pure rage, he storms out of his room. The damn king is calling for him just when he was resting. The wretch put him in this room, so why is he doing something like this out of the blue? The worst part is that it's a commander's meeting, meaning all the strongest people in the castle will be there, which is even worse for him. It's like walking into a death trap. He knows he doesn't stand a chance against anyone there, so the secret is not to provoke them. A blonde demoness remarks that she had never seen the human who lives in the castle. Her friend beside her says she missed the incredible scene when he killed the warrior, turned, and said, "My name is Dion Hart." The demons completely butcher his name, with the girl saying she's never heard a demon with such an evil, sounding name. It really suits him. Dion, standing in the corner, thinks that these idiots got it wrong. His name is Dion Hart. The friend covers his mouth and tells him to let Dion pass, or they'll both die. As Dion walks by, he thinks he's the one who's going to die. His body is 100 fragile. He can't understand how these misunderstandings keep spreading. But he can't let them find out he's weak, or he'll be expelled and killed. He has to maintain a confident facade. He heads towards the door. The soldiers, who were chatting happily, are startled when they see him and immediately greet their commander. He simply orders them to open the door. The arrival of the commander of the Zero Corps is announced. A demon says, he finally showed up. Dion just gives them a blank stare, but inside, he's completely confused. To his left, a demon tells him to sit beside the king. On his right, a blue-haired man named Dodd thinks the boy looks weak, but it would be interesting to fight the most powerful person here. The bald, muscular man on the right, named Belial, says the boy is strong but arrogant for arriving late. A red-haired woman named Delia gives him a shove and tells him to be respectful, as Dion must have his reasons. Meanwhile, Lionel thinks the bald man should respect the commander more. Dion sits down, wondering why everyone is there. It's so uncomfortable he already wants to go back to his room. The king asks how he feels. He says he's fine and apologizes for being a little late. A demon appears by his side and offers to serve him a drink. He says nothing, but internally he's celebrating. These meetings always have the rarest wine in the entire region, and it's one of the few reasons he enjoys being there. However, he notices that this time it isn't wine. He's confused, while the other demons, for some reason, are all staring at him. He slams his hand on the table. Why did everyone else get wine except for me? He demands. Is it because I'm being discriminated against for being human? The king states that he was the one who gave the order. Dion immediately thinks the king has discovered he's worthless, and doesn't want to waste good wine on him. The boy already imagines himself being executed. But then the king informs him that this meeting is, in fact, because of him. He orders Belial to provide the details. The demon reports that Team 12 has been protecting the territory, but they urgently need backup. Part of the area had been evacuated, but the rest were behind a wall. They needed to be moved before the worst happened. Everyone at the table is confused, wondering how this could have happened. Apparently, even Dion is surprised. Demonic creatures are failed creations of the Demon King. They lose control and run rampant. However, Dion doesn't understand what this has to do with him. The meeting is about him. Belial explains that the war is escalating and, mysteriously, more and more monsters keep appearing. Odd states the reason for the buildup is obvious. They killed the hero, so who else would be there to kill the monsters? Dion knows it's theoretically his fault since that's what they all believe. Is he going to be blamed for something like this? He glares at the Demon King, since that wretch also wanted the hero dead. The Demon King looks back at the boy, and seems to see something in his eyes. He laughs and announces that the Zero Corps will provide backup. Dion is confused. The king says he can go there, calm things down, and kill a few creatures. From the side, Belial is envious that the king trusts this boy to handle what the entire army couldn't. He doesn't understand why the king has so much faith in him. Dion says he still hasn't recovered 100, silently pleading for the king to change his mind. Odd remarks that the boy doesn't want to go, but Jaikar says he's misunderstanding. If it were anyone else, you might think that, he explains. But I know the commander is suppressing his thirst for combat because the most logical decision is for him to fight on a stronger front. The other commander is impressed, admitting he hadn't realized all that. He looks at Dion with excitement, thinking the boy is not only strong but also a clear-headed strategist. The king says he's not asking the boy to go on a killing spree. He just wants him to go there, relax, and manage the situation. But Dion knows this will be difficult. He doesn't want to go at all. However, with everyone staring at him with shining eyes, he says, "Fine, I'll go," and immediately heads for the carriage. Once again, Dion finds himself in a situation he has no idea how he got into. As soon as he got back to his room, he packed his bags and left. At least he was free of that problem. However, he knows life outside the castle won't be much better. Near the Empire is the insane emperor, the person who ordered him to kill the Demon King. Then there's his older brother, who hates him and has always wanted him dead. He tries to focus on the positive. The Zero Corps is very competent, and Ed is one of its strongest members. A soldier informs him they've reached the village, and he orders them to maintain formation. Dion tries to calm himself. He doesn't have to do much. He just needs to stay calm, and everything will sort itself out. Meanwhile, he sips on the Demon King's special wine, which he obviously stole before leaving the meeting. I'm more dead than alive anyway, so let's enjoy it, he thinks. It's been a long time since he felt so alive. Outside, Ed finds his silence strange. Is Dion depressed because of that incident before we left? He wonders. As they were leaving, a man had insisted Dion ride in the carriage, not on horseback. Dion just thought, that's exactly what I'm doing. Why would I ride those horrible headless horses? He entered the carriage, said fine, and crossed his arms. Ed, however, thinks, only time will heal the boy. I can see he would have preferred to go by horse. Since his health deteriorated, he's had to suppress his desires. But we can only follow the king's orders to take the carriage. Just then, a demon at the front announces their arrival at the village of Jant. The entire place is in flames. Dead bodies are scattered everywhere, the creatures have clearly decimated the location. Ed warns everyone to be careful, as the monsters shouldn't be far. And there they are, right ahead. He orders everyone to prepare for battle and to protect the commander, who trusts them all. The demons charge, and the fight begins. However, Ed soon notices that there seems to be no end to the monsters. A giant werewolf lunges to bite him, and he realizes he was distracted. The scene shifts to someone asking the king if this army will be sufficient. It's Jiker, who says there are too many monsters there, they should have sent more support. The king, however, assures him that the Zero Corps is extremely powerful. Besides, he adds, even if they find themselves in danger, they can count on that person. A flash of movement, a single slash, and the massive beast is dead. Ed stares in awe at the monster fallen on the ground. He calls out to the commander, who points a dagger at his face. Are you an enemy too, by any chance? Dion asks. Ed realizes he's acting the way he does when he's drunk and says he's not an enemy. Dion then points to another wolf. Is that the enemy? The wolf seems to attack him, and the boy explodes against a wall. What was that? I thought he would be a total Chad, but he's really just a mess on the wall. Now I know who the enemy is, he says, getting up and lunging forward in a series of cuts, shouting, it's time to go crazy. 4 or 5 more creatures come from each side, but he just switches his grip and cuts through them all. The rest of the army watches in terrified awe. This is their commander, the person who never leaves a body intact. He grabs one of the creatures and says, it's your turn. They said he never stopped cutting until he was certain the enemy was dead. The remaining monsters are too afraid to advance as he finishes off another one. The scene changes again, this time to a different castle. Someone informs His Majesty that they have seen the Zero Corps. According to the report, they were as strong and merciless as the rumors claimed. Emperor Edgewordo Desert says that this reminds him of a certain person, and now that the demons have started to act, they cannot stand still. He then says they have the perfect person for the job. In other words, he is giving him the opportunity to bring honor to the empire. The man immediately says that he humbly accepts His Majesty's command, who orders him to become that kind of talent, which is, in theory, the exact name of the story. The following chapter tells of the 8-year war, where so much blood was shed in the name of the empire's glory on the front lines, where warriors sacrificed themselves for the cause. The protagonist, Dion, said that they were not soldiers but meat shields that had been abandoned. That place was the perfect description of hell. While the warriors continue to fight, screaming that everything is for the king, Dion just thinks it's a joke. He never asked to be there. He had no intention of giving his life for the damned empire that put him in this hell. He was just doing his best to survive. Dying for them was never an option. Suddenly, a figure appears behind him, Riley. She approaches and tells him to stay alive, then, and get his revenge. Dion wakes up in bed, panting, wondering what that dream was. He gets up, a bit unsteady, until someone says that he's finally awake. It's a desperate Ed and Ben, who says he was scared when he saw him covered in blood. Dion, however, has no idea how he got there. Lauren explains that the hunt was a success. He became unconscious after killing countless monsters. He apologizes for not being stronger and able to help. Dion, however, has no idea that the blessing is over and wants to know what this business of him being unconscious is all about. Ben then says he must have suffered some memory loss from being seriously injured. Dion is a little confused but remembers taking a sip of the drink, and then everything exploding. Had he gotten drunk and done something stupid? However, this wasn't just any injury, he had a total blackout. He didn't know anything that had happened. Ben, however, tells him to rest assured. The corpse completed the mission without any casualties and says that the boy is truly an inspiration. Dion, however, thinks he did absolutely nothing. The doctor tells him to stop being modest, but he is trying to understand how the rest of the army took care of everything. He then apologizes to Ed for getting involved and causing so much trouble. However, Ed smiles, saying that on the contrary, he was phenomenal. The way he took the initiative and finished off the creatures was the epitome of a commander. However, Ben advises him to start taking it easier. Even though he is strong, he is still injured from other battles, so it would be good to take care of himself. Dion still doesn't understand what they're talking about. He doesn't remember killing any creatures. So, does the protagonist not know that he is strong when he is drunk, or does he always forget when he fights? However, Ed tells him not to worry, that the army would get stronger. He could count on them. Dion, however, is feeling uncomfortable. He just wants these damned people to go away. Just then, two more enter. A beautiful woman and a buff man say they heard he was awake, while the other tells them to shut up, that he is still recovering. The two are arguing about paying their respects to the commander when Jaikar appears and tells them both to be quiet. They were just there to see how he was and not to make him uncomfortable. They apologize. But at that moment, Dion has had enough and tells everyone to get out of the room. While wondering how to tell these damned people to disappear, the group thinks he's a bit stressed because of the situation, and Jaikar just asks him not to kill everyone in the castle. Dion is a little confused. How could he kill these three? Not even if a miracle happened. However, he remembers that if they discover he is weak, they will not show any mercy. At that moment, he imagines that if perhaps he shows mercy, it might increase his chances of survival in the future. Maybe they would even try to spare his life if they discovered the truth. Aesel then apologizes if he made him angry, to which Dion replies that yes, he is stressed about it, while thinking that from now on he will choose his words very carefully. He tells them that being angry does not justify violence. Many times, the best course of action is mercy. It would be good for them to listen to that word very carefully. Even if one day someone lies to them or is weaker than them, that person deserves mercy. He is thinking that he hopes they remember this very well. However, the group seems a bit down, just saying they understand. He doesn't get it. Do they think he's a big, alpha human who talks too much or what? Jaikar, however, just thinks it's a weird way of showing forgiveness. He just says that the mission was a success and praises his work. The woman, all excited, says that everyone in the castle is talking about his heroic act, and how he took out half the creatures by himself. The protagonist just thinks this is a false rumor, and wants to know who is giving him credit for their own work. Seeing Ed all smiley, he wonders why this damned guy is smiling so much. At that moment, Aesel says he heard about his performance and is there to make a formal request. Dion asks what it is. The man then says that when he is fully recovered, he wanted a chance to fight him. But that jerk is the third in command of the king's personal guard. He knows he doesn't stand a chance. I think that explains why the king gave him the grape juice, right? He responds hesitantly if the guy wants a duel with him. Obviously, he answers enthusiastically that he does. He's eager to see how amazing he is, and has learned a thing or two. Jar also replies that it will be interesting, while I think the commander has really never fought anyone from the army. It would be a great chance to see his abilities with his own eyes. The idea is also already excited, wanting to know who this strong person is. What is his fighting style? It would be amazing. He's hesitating, but the three are there, shining. Our guy is dying to say no, but what will they think if he refuses? The problem is, just take a look at Asudes and you can see that this guy will finish him off in one punch. He replies that it's not a good idea. The fight against the creatures was still fresh in his mind, so there was the possibility of death. Asidio, however, thinks that the boy is really afraid of the fight. The protagonist realizes, that the guy isn't falling for the excuse. Jar then says he's impressed by so much confidence. The boy is refusing for fear of killing the poor Ez, who gives our guy a look and is a little embarrassed there and asks if that's true. John, startled, is also a little confused. And Jaikar warns that it's best for Aesel not to insist because the commander refused for fear of killing him. At that moment, he trembles and asks if it's true, if he's sure he would die in a fight. While thinking that he has no doubt. In the commander's head, he's sure he will win. And here he was, all confident, thinking he had some chance. Now it was clear why the king trusted this boy's talent. At that he lowers his head and says that it's hard to admit, but he's not sure if he will win or get out alive. And if the thing were a fight to the death, he preferred not to get involved. It may hurt his pride, but he's grateful that the boy thought so much about everyone's safety. He realizes that the guy seems to be okay with it, while Ed is impressed that the boy is respected even by the most aggressive demons. The protagonist, right? At least he got rid of that. However, Mesoldio says that he hasn't given up. When he's strong enough not to die easily, he'll make the request again. Obviously, that's the worst option for our boy who's dying for him to give up soon. However, the guy says he's motivated to continue strengthening himself and return to the challenge. He says goodbye, and says he's going to training. Jar praised the protagonist, saying that Audie was discouraged, but with a few words he managed to restore his energy. The protagonist, however, is already staggering there, and the protagonist is going to help, apologizing to everyone, but the commander needed rest. They apologize, saying that they are leaving, while the proto is already wanting to leave this place once again. At that moment, Jaikar says that after he fights Arild, he also wants a fight, and is looking forward to it. The Protonho falls on the bed and says he's going to sleep. He needs to leave this demon realm soon, and sometime later he's exhausted. It's Eddie inviting him all day to talk to the army people. The doctor telling him to focus on recovery and the demons calling him for combat. He can't understand why everyone wants to interact so much with the poor guy. He kicks the stone, telling it to leave him alone. And this stone, however, hits the heads of some demons there in front. Obviously the guys aren't happy with this, already turn to see who it is. However, you know, right? Dade, Karakutum, and everything bows and says goodnight to the Demon King and apologizes for making any noise. The Silver One doesn't even know what they are talking about, however they explain that there was an incubus here bothering them. They were trying to get him out of the way. And now this guy is also trembling, right? Even though he has the most overpowered magic in the world, everyone ran away, but the protagonist doesn't know what to do with him trembling in front of him. Now the boy thinks he's dead. He knows the commander is someone quiet, but more brutal than any demon when he gets angry. The boy even cries, saying that today he dies. However, the day one of all gentle puts his little hand saying to stand up that the people had gone. Strangely, the demon gets all cute, wondering why he's being treated like this. He says he's an incubus, and that he knows everyone despises him. Io, however, just grabs his arm, tells him to get up and asks why. He pats his shoulder, tells him not to worry. However, the guy, oh my god, the demon says he's too gentle. This made him so happy. Maybe he can return the favor if he has free time. Hold on, right? The incubus normally gives peculiar dreams to women, right? All that. Succubus is for men. What does this boy want with our guy? Meanwhile, and the demon, is wanting to know, right? Where's the guy? John, however, has no idea how long this guy is wanting. Hugh, the incubus serves a token of gratitude there, which is a plant that will help him recover. He knows he's a commander, has a lot to do, but if he wants, right, he can take him there. Dill didn't even know that the castle had a garden with this type of plant. So, the demon asks for forgiveness for not introducing himself and says that he is the gardener who takes care of the castle, known as Ryan. Our boy is impressed that he has such a quiet job as a gardener in a violent world like this. He's already imagining beautiful flowers, a peaceful setting and fresh air, a perfect place for good therapy. He then says that he really needs a relaxing place and asks him to take him there. Lauren tells him to follow, while Dion celebrates that he will be able to rest. And there they are, in a rather cute garden. Our boy praises the smell of fresh plants and clean air. But, obviously, the first of the plants comes for a bite. He barely dodges it. Lauren immediately tells his plant that it's naughty and shouldn't bite visitors like that, asking if it wants to learn another lesson. The little plant immediately droops, and he apologizes, saying it was just very excited to see him. Dion, however, is sure that the plant noticed he was weak and must have attacked instantly. Besides, it was now clear what kind of garden this was, and it was better for him to get out of there. He immediately says he remembered he has something to do, and says goodbye. The boy wants to know where he's going. Dion says he's going to the training hall. He has to meet the corps members and practice as soon as possible. He wishes him a good night and leaves a confused Lauren, who thinks it must be something really urgent. However, he decides to give him a little present next time since he seemed to like the plants a lot. Dion just thinks that sent a chill down his spine. He was an idiot to think anything in this place would be normal. He wants to go back to his room, which is the only quiet place, before he runs into anyone else. Especially because he wants to avoid the corpse, as he is sure he drank, did something stupid, and embarrassed himself. He remembers Ed telling him to give a motivational speech since he does nothing. But the truth is, that was just his interpretation. The guy hadn't said anything like that. He then goes to the training hall, which is empty. No one had arrived yet, since he was supposed to give the speech. He wonders where he can sit. He sees some wooden swords and decides to pick one up to train a little. He doesn't remember anything because he was drunk, but at least now he can see these guys in action. However, the first move he makes with the sword, it hits the floor, and he realizes it's heavy as hell. It was embarrassing to admit, but he couldn't even lift a small wooden sword, let alone a steel one. With such terrible muscles, it was better for him to stick to a dagger. But then he notices something to the side. A bunch of demons were staring at him with their mouths open. The protagonist wonders if they just saw that. However, from everyone else's perspective, he is standing there, facing everyone, ready for combat. Everyone comes over excitedly, wanting to know if the commander is okay, saying he made everyone worry. They all praise him, saying he was incredible in the last mission. They had never seen anyone like him. Dion tells everyone to calm down, while trying to understand what these crazy people are talking about. Besides, everyone was looking at him with emotion, and he doesn't understand why. He then turns and says that, unfortunately, he couldn't come to them after the mission. However, he praises the work of everyone who participated. Dion's goal is to give everyone as much freedom as possible. Let them train, and do what they want. And that's why he says they don't need his help since they are excellent at their jobs. But suddenly one of them draws his sword, advances, and the protagonist stumbles badly. He doesn't want to fall because it would be a humiliation in front of everyone. However, as he crouches, the sword slash passes over him. The scared man asks how he dodged it. And obviously, Dion has no idea, while everyone else wants to know if the commander is okay. Dion realizes he is not safe in this place and tries to turn around quickly, but ends up elbowing the guy in the face, who falls on his back. The man says he is a bastard, a damned Aruat demon, and the protagonist notices that the man in front of him was also a human. Now that I think about it, there were two versions of him in the dream, right? Could one be interfering? Because it's not possible that he's this lucky. At that moment, the rest of the corps calls for the commander. Dion realizes that no one seems to know this guy, and thinks he needs to escape this place urgently. However, looking to the side, someone was coming at the protagonist with a sword. Our boy knew he couldn't let this guy escape because he was too dangerous. And he gives him a good hit. The guy fell, collapsed. Immediately, Dion orders them to inform the Demon King and arrest the man. He just says goodbye and walks away while the others are all thinking, damn, the commander is disappointed with us. We let an intruder in, and he was the one who got attacked in the end. However, one of them is impressed by the naturalness of his movements. 1 second, he was walking like any other person, and then he suddenly crouched in an extremely natural way, dodged, and turned with an instinctive elbow strike. It was truly frightening. This poor guy was finished. In an instant. It was because he was so exceptional that the rest of the corps served more as his shadow. He had been trying so hard, but to imagine that the commander was still so far ahead of him. Everyone celebrates, saying they have to go back to training to one day compare to him. However, Dion sprained his wrist just by swinging that sword. But whatever. The rest of the corps would take care of that guy. So it was time to go back to the room. Sometime later, he wakes up all sore, and look who's already by his side. The damned king, who said he was sleeping like a rock. The protagonist wonders if he's in a dream, but the man says no, this is reality. He knows the boy just woke up, but he wants him to come with him. However, that was the last thing he wanted. He just woke up and only wanted to rest. But if the man is there, it must be something urgent. And he asks if it's about that intruder. The king puts his hand on his shoulder, says yes, and asks him to come. They follow the staircase while the protagonist wonders why they're going to the castle dungeon. Is that intruder there? Did he say something stupid? However, upon arriving there, the guy is completely sliced. There are people dead around him. Dude, the guy suffered. That's exactly what John asks, wanting to know what happened at night. At that moment, the king tells him to take a look and asks if this guy isn't a bit familiar. He finds this guy strange because he's a human strong enough to kill countless demons. And it seems he gets even stronger when facing the Demon King. At that moment, Dion recognizes that it is what is known as a hero. And Dion knows, man, that heroes when they are against the Demon King, have two options. They can self-destruct causing critical damage if the Demon King is nearby. Or they can spread the power they possess in the form of fragments, and basically give hero power to other people. In the world. Most warriors choose the second path, since the empire needs these 3 fragments which are almost like heroes. In addition, the honor of the second was much greater than the first. The king, however, says it's a joke. They sent a hero like that to the land of the holy demons. Or maybe he was just a candidate or a garbage hero. John knows that an official hero would be stronger, but it doesn't change the fact that a hero wouldn't be wasted like that. There should be some reason for this guy to have been sent to this place. In this, Dion calls the king, and asks to have a word with this guy alone. The king said it's okay, he'll wait outside while the proto warns he won't die. John wants to understand this guy didn't bring any message, came directly to him. So why, at this moment, the guy calls for John Hart and says he is a cursed traitor. The Majesty trusted him to turn him into a hero, and yet he betrayed the Imperium and stayed in the land of demons. Suddenly Dion starts laughing and says that this must be to get his attention. Really, the guy was disposable. The guy tries to say something about being a traitor, but Dinho just says no. The fact that the man calls him a traitor proves how disposable he is. He doesn't understand what he did for the Emperor to hate him so much to the point of sending him there to die. This is because the Emperor knows absolutely everything. Why is he in the demon realm, and what is the ultimate goal of this? Is the Pertinho being 200 gay or really has a plan in this? and now the guy is questioning if he was really abandoned by the king. However, Dinho just says goodbye and tells him to think very well before dying. The guy keeps hitting the floor saying that he gave everything for the empire while screaming, saying that he will never forgive this damned bastard. However, outside, Dinho thinks how fragile loyalty is. He shouldn't have bothered, and talking to this guy was a waste of time. Then he wants to know if he's finished by the expression on his face. Did he get all the answers he wanted? John says that the king decides this, but he thinks it's better to kill that guy. He then replies that everything is fine, they would take care of it, but in return the boy would owe him a favor. The Dinho doesn't seem excited. The king says that Jakar made an emergency request. This time they wouldn't face a candidate but a real hero. And as they must know, heroes and demons are not a good mix. The silver relative knows that if who's on the front line isn't an abandoned guy but a true hero, the demons barely have a chance. However, the king says he knows the boy must also be curious. What is the emperor thinking when sending a fragment like this directly to them? It's his chance to find out. Today, suddenly, the Dinho kind of wonders when he stopped there, and in this the demon is going up. I'm saying, this boy has a double personality, man. Now it's explained why he baited the human. There, right? It was another personality talking. That's why I thought he was very smart. And now he doesn't understand where the demon king wants to send him. However, there he is waiting for the carriage, man. He remembers following this guy to the dungeon, but then he was on the outside with the guy telling him to leave, which is leaving him completely confused. Why does the king want to send him to the front lines? He doesn't know. But there's Ed saying they're ready. He said he understood while knowing that the new hero will appear. As he has no choice, he at least goes and sees what this so-called new hero looks like. One thing, the king is right, he's also curious. While Ed thinks that the hunt for the creatures killed some of the thirst for blood, but it wasn't enough for him. Even though the situation on the front lines is dangerous, the boy was advancing with a smile. At that moment, the so-called Lionel calls for the commander all cute, saying she was dying to miss him. He's a bit confused, wants to know what brings her there. Very insecure because after the king she is the second most powerful, and besides that she is the difficult type to understand. She then all cute says that she knows he's going to the front lines, and brought this little gift. He has no idea what this is and thinks she's very suspicious. However, the second she starts to say that she has a power of protection, he grabs it right away, and says it's perfect. It even seems he's going to refuse something that will ensure he stays alive. However, at that moment, he notices that he hit, and accidentally made a mark on her head. Ed is all emotional saying that it's good that she helped the commander like that, while she says it's amazing that he likes the commander so much. The two are loving each other, they're saying that both together will protect him forever. While John tells them to control themselves and go soon. Already in the carriage, he tries to understand why everyone thinks he killed that hero. He not only didn't do that, but he didn't try to stop the cell explosion and also didn't even try to block the attack with his own body. Back then he was just one of the comrades. The so-called warrior with brown hair calls out to him, and says that he wants the boy to stay there. The proto, confused, asks if he's sure. He says yes. He was the warrior of the Imperial Army. It was he who had the obligation to put an end to that fight. John is going to say something, but the guy just says that he's already done more than enough. Besides, the Demon King was a being more powerful than anyone, so he can no longer guarantee the survival of everyone. And since one person or less had to pass the information to the Empire, that person would be him. In addition, he knows that Dan has things to solve, and that's why he wants him to go away. He knows that he needs great achievements to make that dream true, and that's why he has to come back alive for an emperor. In this, he says goodbye and asks for good luck. A long time passes, and John is wondering there if the battle is finally over. He's wanting to know if the fight is over, but he can't leave the place, kind of out of guilt, shame or whatever. However, in the end, it's him who has to pass on the information. So he gets up to find out what happened and come back. In this he comes face to face with the Demon King, and all the others surrounding a hero. The king asks for the last words, but the warrior just laughs and starts to shine. From above, Dion already knows right away that it's a self-explosion. Apparently, this is the end of his things and it was time for him to pass on this information. However, right in this, there's a demon on his back asking who's there. The creature comes to the attack saying that he's hiding like a rat. The blow hits the ground, but Dion manages to dodge. This damned one, however, arrived without giving any warning and now he's screwed. One more attack. He manages to get out. To the back, leaving only a cut on his face. The bad thing is that now he has to get out of there alive, and pass on this information. The monster comes for one more, but he manages to dodge all the attacks. Passes underneath, jumps and is already on the beast's head hitting a punch in the neck. The problem is that the monster reacts. He sees that it wasn't deep enough. He doesn't know what to do. And now the whole mountain is breaking and the two fall from above. The demons all put their hands on their faces, smoking while the pro wonders if he's still alive. In this he notices that at least the monster was dead under him. He killed the ogre, But if he fell from the mountain, obviously now he's in front of all the demons who are there wondering who this person is who has just killed the 7th commander as he is so strong. Naruto, I am sure that he screwed up for him, man. He killed the commander in front of their army. And the worst of all is that right in front is the Demon King. Staring. At that moment someone calls for Dion. It's the warrior wanting to know why he's there if he knew he was going to use the self-explosion. Dion apologizes, saying that he failed in the mission to escape while the guy replies that he wanted him to survive more than anyone else. For him, Dion was the person with the kindest heart he knew, and he would like him to be the next hero. He then asks if the world is seeing this and asks that this boy continue to live. At that moment, instead of generating self-explosion, he starts to shine, and passes the fragments of his power to the protagonist. The Demon King at the time recognizes it as a transfer of power, but Jin knows that something like this is impossible and says that the warrior was really silly. He should know that you can't intentionally transfer all the power to another person like that. He was an idiot to self-explode just to try that. He puts him down and thinks that in the end he's not feeling anything different. He was still the same weakling as always. The demons around, however, are wondering if he resisted the hero's explosion. However, it could be seen that it cost a lot, since he fell to his knees and was with blood stains. However, man, just be sure. He came a long way, but there was the end of his story. At that moment, the king asks why he's smiling and wants to know the boy's name. That's when he says that he's John Hart, and the guy says he likes him. Inm is wanting to find a chance to run, however, it's when the guy offers him to fight by his side. Den is kind of confused and the king just explains that no one will protest, because everyone there saw what he just did. He had killed a captain and resisted the hero's attack. John thinks that he kind of managed to survive, but that wasn't the goal of things. And that's how Torino do Castillo believed that he had the strength to kill the commander and resist an attack from the hero that should have killed even the Demon King. At that moment, Ed opens the carriage and says that they arrived at the border between the demon realm and humans, the front line, where the combat was endless. Jaikar appears all worn out and says that they were waiting for our boy who, from the hands, thinking that he should have retreated, comes to this place. However, in the end, right, he never has a choice. He laughs, saying that life is a disgrace. Jaikar thinks only the commander would arrive at the battlefield laughing with so much eagerness to fight, but asks the boy to hold back a little, because his chance was coming. He has no idea what chance he's talking about. And obviously, Jaikar explains that he and everyone would join the fight as soon as the Empire attacked again. Now I was thoughtful, because the king knows that he absorbed the power and didn't tank it. So, who's playing fourth-dimensional chess here? Oh my god, I need answers. However, now I also remembered that at the moment he was possessed inside the cell, he told the other guy that he had an agreement with the Emperor who knew everything. Does the Emperor control the second personality? Oh my god, I have to stop tripping here, right, and continue with the story that eventually I discover. Meanwhile, in the Empire's front line, they discovered that Team Zerov had arrived along with its commander. It seems he left the spirit of the troops very animated, while, on the other hand, right, the humans are not with all that will. The captain is hesitant. He didn't expect the command, which is the king's wild card, to come there. He heard that this guy was the most exceptional of all. And the guy on the right already wants to know what they're going to do. No longer can victory be guaranteed. He then replies that they'll have to send that assassin. However, the big, bearded man says that the chance of success was minimal. However, the human replies that they need to know if this guy really exists. The humors are frightening, but maybe all this was fabricated. A type of illusion made by the Demon King to keep the soldiers optimistic. This is the current hero of the humans, known as Krule, who says that if an assassin confirms the existence of this boy, it's already enough to be considered an achievement. So then it changes to Dion, our guy who is obviously wanting to run away from this battle and not participate. The problem is that he is commander of Zera. Dude, how is he going to get out of this position? Ed asks if everything is okay. It's hard to pass the bandages while he trembles so much. He said yes and asks him not to exaggerate. You don't need to be so careful. Especially since his plan, right, dude, is to see the hero's face and get out of there at that moment. Ed, however, is looking with a frightened face, saying that the war will start at any minute and he has to be careful, yes. While he's angry that the boy never takes care of himself. Jin is trying to understand why this guy likes him so much, man. All he does is spit blood, faint. Why do they try so hard? Maybe he was an angel disguised as a demon. Until the guy says, right, that they were prepared to end all these bastard humans from existence. What is this, dude? He mummified the boy, and it seems that it's a special thing there that the Demon King did so that he wouldn't lose any temperature and would keep his health to the maximum. In addition, he gains the Mantomatic, and Ed says that he must be very valuable to the commander. The Silver One is thinking that the demon must act like this because he has enough power to spend as much as he wants. This is because the demon's magic is limited, and the mana spent cannot be recovered. In addition, there is a legend that says that the more mana the demons spend, the sooner the heroes appear. If the king is spending so carelessly, he must be confident that he will win the next hero. But with that, the pro had mummified, was prepared for such a war. And Ed is all excited, saying that he is sure that Team Zerov will win this time. He just thanks and says he will inspect the field and the army. Ed is there all emotional, saying that he has never seen him so motivated. However, Dion's objective, in fact, is to find the perfect place to hide until he bumps into everyone, who are already excited to see the commander there in flesh and blood. Everyone is shouting that now they will win, while Jakar agrees with the king that the boy's presence animates everyone. However, on top of the tree there is a guy watching. He finally saw the infamous commander of Zero. Apparently the boy was real. He seems smaller and weaker than he imagined. However, that excessive calm before a fight, and that intense aura emanating proves that you can't underestimate. It's just that maybe the humors were really exaggerated. He can turn around now and go away to confirm existence, or he can test how good he is. In this he throws a dart in Dan's direction, who is always when about to hit, crouches and stumbles. He looks to the side, the guy gets scared and runs away desperately. While our boy is all confused. He's tripping on stones before the war starts. Sure, he's going to die. Someone in front asks what happened, and he gets up saying that he was stretching. However, the problem is that now everyone is watching him, so, right? How is he going to look for a safe place? The guy in the tree sees him entering and realizes that maybe he hasn't been located. Or in fact he doesn't want to alert anyone and will send the most skilled subordinate to hunt him. Now he doesn't know if he returns, because that's not enough to confirm the boy's ability. He decides that he has the final chance. And in this Edgar asks, what's the problem? Had he already finished the inspection? John says yes and changes the subject, asking about the so-called new hero of the Imperial Army. The friend, however, replies that this guy has been hiding in the face behind a helmet since he appeared. But they know he's Ispashim. The assassin hidden on the roof realizes they're talking about Mr. Krule. Had they already discovered that he had been sent by this guy? At that moment Dion asks what's that, for heaven's sake. Everything that shouldn't be there. He is angry because he's being prevented from drinking, but as soon as he leaves the guys are drinking. This Ed apologizes. He said that in fact he prepared it for the boy, who changes his expression at that moment and asks if he really can drink. Ed says that of course yes, serves, and he thanks. Our boy is all happy, but suddenly he hears a strange sound. He looks back, Ed asks what happened, and he replies that it's nothing. Oh, man, the assassin distracted with a little stone far away, and when he turned, he threw poison into the glass. Something so powerful that it kills anyone in an instant. He's going to take a sip. The guy is sure this guy is dead. He's about to drink, but he's hesitating. And Ed asks what the problem is. Suddenly, he throws the glass on the ground and says that this place is full of insects. However, he wonders why the glass suddenly fell from his hand. The moment Eddie was serving, he was wanting to get that fly away, and when he went to drink, the thing continued passing near his ear, and then he got angry, and ended up slapping the Masuda without meaning to. I am now more certain than ever that this second soul of his, this personality too, is acting. Because it's not possible. He's going to apologize for Ed, as soon as he sees the glass on the ground smoking and says it had poison. He looks back, doesn't find anyone, but warns that there was an intruder there. At the same time, the assassin is fleeing desperately, saying that he has to warn the Empire. Mr. Krule needed to know this. The commander of the army was extremely dangerous. At that JR is warning that someone has infiltrated, and the objective was to kill the commander. Everyone is a little confused, wanting to know how no one noticed something like that. However, he warns that everyone will be punished later for having let the enemies get close. John is right there sweating in the cold, thinking that he almost didn't die. Deceiving Ed on the side apologizes, saying that he is incompetent, didn't notice that presence. John replies that he's impressed that he didn't notice either. This because, right? It means the assassin was damn good. It was already time for him to be fired from this position, because it's clearly a position that's being hunted. The worst thing is that he didn't even drink anything, because of this cursed assassin. Even wanting to see a bottle in another person's hand. At that moment he calls for Ed, who says that he accepts any punishment. However, the pro wants to know if that bottle of wine was brand new. He said yes. Our guy then takes the bottle from the other person's hand, and says that the poison was in the glass and not in the bottle. That means that there's no problem drinking this, man. The Protonho is like an alcoholic uncle, man. Ready to risk life just for a little drink. Back there at Krule's base. The guy is warning that he is dangerous. He is 100% sure that the rumors were true, and they have no chance of winning. Krule is scared. The assassin they sent was not an amateur and came back completely devastated. The only way for them to beat this guy was if they had that person. Big, bearded man. Asks if he's talking about the other hero of the Empire, and he says yes, but unfortunately he's not available. The only option may be to retreat. This guy who never makes up his mind either. Says that it's screwed. Everyone will think they're too scared of the commander. In this, Krule hits the map and says they're going to retreat. However, whoever follows him will surely find the perfect death. In addition, it is not worth raising the sword on this piece of land where the sun doesn't even rise. His plan, in fact, makes it clear to the demons that if they don't invade the human realm, they can also stay calm. The big bearded one says it's okay, but wants to know, right, what he's warning the Empire. Krule just says that he received orders to recover the lands that the demon took and not to further expand the territory. Now that they've recovered what was once theirs, there's no reason to move forward. That's what he's going to warn. Krule is calm. This would certainly not ruin his first time as a hero. At least he would avoid people questioning what he is capable of. All he expects is that these demons don't give much trouble anymore. Oigo says to stay calm. He heard that this guy hardly participates in combat, but right at that moment someone enters calling for the commander and warning that the demons were advancing along with the troop of the so-called Zera. What Krule least wanted happened. And dude, our boy is really passing, cutting everyone. Ah, he drank, and the kid, oh my god, is alone with the dagger in his hand, piercing everyone. Damn, son, the guy is dropping bodies and Ed is there on the side just watching. After he drank the bottle, he decided to put everyone on the offensive. He, however, is not going to complain, right? Especially since they are at an advantage because of this. One more human falls to the ground, and when he looks, it dissolves our boy and recognizes him as the incarnation of the demon. If that wasn't the most dangerous creature, he has no idea what it is. Crying desperately, he knows that if he doesn't fight, he dies. However, he was too afraid to lose the sword. Soon he would be one more of those bodies with countless cuts on the ground. And Dion is already in his face saying not to stand still and try something. He had to try his best to survive or he would end up dying too quickly. However, right at that moment, an attack hits him, throws the kid into the tree. At that moment, Ed comes running to help and turns around asking who had the courage to do this. Man. And obviously, right, it was the hero who says that this attack was with the intention of finishing him off in one blow. Ed seems worried and asks if the protagonist can get up. That at the moment they see, right, man, that he survived thanks to that protection that Lionel delivered to him. While Ed is desperate, the guy who was down is all emotional that the Empire's hope had arrived. He celebrates that he is safe, but Dion just passed by and tore him apart. Oh my god, the head flew far away. Perchinha is really brutal, isn't he, son? And goes face to face with the warrior, saying that he was eager to meet him. Krule replies that this is just a generous title, but the protag is curious, saying that a lot has been said about him. It was just strange that his voice was very familiar. Perhaps they had already met, so why doesn't he take off that helmet? However, Krule said that he won't take off his armor in front of an enemy. In addition, he wasn't feeling in the least that the person in front of him was familiar. And observing the boy, he wonders, why is this guy saying this if they've never met? John was making fun with the little knife, suddenly said that it was okay, since it was like that. Suddenly he advances saying that it's just to finish him off. The attack was going straight to the eye, but Dion manages to duck, realizing that the boy was faster than he imagined, but even so he manages a counterattack on the dagger. The two end up retreating and John praises his speed. In this, Krule advances once more. He has to defend himself. Then he says he's going to have to find out if he's a true hero or not. Krule begins to send a sequence of attacks saying that the verification is there. While he notices that even though the commander was fast, his attacks were light. And another blow to the hand ends up sending the dagger far away. And apparently Perchinha gave a tremble there. In this, Krule saw the perfect chance to finish him off there. However, Perchinha pulls a dagger from his leg and manages to defend another attack. The two face each other, he kicks him, and again they retreated. Krule continues to find the attacks too light. Maybe the guy wasn't taking this seriously. However, for him, it doesn't matter that there's a favor. In this John wonders if the guy has already noticed. He raises his hands. He says it was fun, but it's time to end it there. Krule replies that the war isn't over, especially since they invaded the territory before. John, however, replies that it ended when they killed the commander of the 9th Troop. In addition, they have already recovered the land they wanted, and should no longer be trying to invade the demonic realm. Krule tells him to shut up, but he insists on saying that they don't need to waste any more energy, because they can each be happy defending the land they possess. Krule knows that it's not such a bad offer. He recovered what he wanted, and the conflict wasn't even that ugly. For his side. The problem is that he has the feeling that if he insists a little more, he defeats this commander. Until John tells him to take a look at his own army. When Krule turns around, man, everyone is finished and exhausted. No one was prepared for this fight. Then he replies that everything is fine. This time they would retreat. He knows they're at a disadvantage. Retreating now is the most important plan and also what he already wanted to do. John says goodbye and says that he hopes they never see each other again. Krule just ignores and turns to the army. While the demons are all celebrating, saying that this was a nightmare, but it's a good thing they had the commander to trust. Jaker, however, wonders if the attitude was right. The Empire had lost the will to fight, and it was the perfect chance to advance. However, he saw that Dion was looking forward to a fight, so he must have some reason to have cancelled. He puts his hand on the boy's shoulder and praises him. However, at that moment, he just tells him to go screw himself and faints, muttering that this body really was a disgrace. Jakar notices that his body was boiling and wonders if he really fought at this level or in this condition. Perhaps now it's explained why he decided to stop the fight to prevent the enemy from realizing the state of his body. If he lost in front of all the demons there, this would impact the motivation of the entire army. Really, in the end, it was a perfect judgment of the situation. It's no wonder that he came out of nowhere, became the commander from the moment he defeated the commander of the 7th Squadron or blocked the hero's explosion, or the fact that the king saw the ability he possesses. This is enough to know how talented he was. But even so, he had some doubts, but to date he saw once and for all that he really deserved the title he possessed. From now on, the demon can rest that he takes care of the rest. Already in the Demon King's castle, Lailanal gets up in despair, because that crystal that she had given had broken. A creature wouldn't be capable of that, and she's very worried because he must be in danger. She already says that she's going away to see what happened while the employee begs her to stay, because the Demon King ordered her to protect the barrier. For start, John is already arriving. Red Demon praising his work. Our boy takes a look and he already comes all happy praising, saying that Jav said that he did an exceptional job. He wants to know how it was to meet the Neri, and John says that he's going to have to report on him. The Demon King realizes that the boy seemed tense because of this battle and says that later they'll talk because it seems that the commander of the second group also has some information. This commander, apparently, wanted to put some clothes on our Pertinha. And the king realizes that he doesn't seem to miss her very much. However, he didn't have to worry that she was far away. For now, they were just going there to study some papers. Already looking at the sheets, Din notices something strange. However, suddenly someone calls the commander, and now that he has recovered consciousness, until this moment, he was there with the crazy personality of his head. And now he's wanting to know how he ended up in the Demon King's castle. What happened? Wasn't he on the front lines? He woke up because Lailanal is all snotty, glued to him there, saying that she was worried about him. Joe, obviously still trying to process the situation, and in this remembers that once again he drank. He can't believe that a bottle made him completely lose consciousness like that, while Lailanal is there drooling on the clothes, saying that she was worried when the necklace broke. Oh dear. That thing protects once against instant death. In other words, right, he really ran the risk of dying. However, she praises him, saying that even so he defeated the new hero. Then it's amazing. She's glued, letting out the heart while he notices that these drinks are making him go crazy in the head. In the beginning he notices the sheet in his hand, and opens it to see the name of Krule. Oh, man, it's his last name. At that moment he laughs because this was someone he would never forget as long as he lived. This guy is his older brother, man. And we see Krule talking to D, damn it, who is there finished crying. The boy asks for help from his brother, but he raises the sword and gives him a cut. What is this, dude? Now I understand why the boy came to the demon's lap, right? The family of that there, worse than the devil. This. He makes a little face there at Lailanal and says that he has something to solve. The purple hair says that he's very scary, and asks if she's okay. However, she seems to think that he got angry about something, and is finding it amazing, saying that he's too beautiful when he's irritated. In the room, however, John asks why the Emperor put this bastard as a hero if he knows everything that happened. Not to mention that right now he was thinking of returning. At that moment we see that the Demon King asked, right, if it wasn't time for him to visit the Empire. Dion says yes, and that if he allows it, he will be able to get information about the new hero. Or then tells him to have a safe trip, because if he stayed away from the Empire for too long, people would suspect. In this he touches the boy's chest and puts a magic that allows him to always know where he is, and the king says goodbye, saying that when he has some useful information, just let him know. This was the conversation that the two had, but John doesn't know why he has to be the Demon King's spy. First, it's clear that he always loses his memory when he's very stressed or dealing with something difficult. And obviously to avoid this, then he needs to avoid stress, but it's not easy. At that moment, Ed comments that he heard that he's going to the human realm today. He says yes, because there's something that he personally has to take a look at, and wants to know what the problem is. Eddington comments about something that the Demon King said, and we see that he asked what he thought about becoming a commander. He commented, will it be for the 9th Army's vacancy that was without a commander? The king says yes. He was as Dion's assistant, but he knew that he was more than competent to become a commander. Eddie was thoughtful. This was one of the goals he had for a long time, but that he had put aside to serve Dion. In this he asks the king what happens to his current position if he assumes this, because he just replies that they will elect another person who is as good as him to help Dion. In addition, he didn't need to force himself. If he refuses, he can also find another person to be a commander. Of course an important job would be with another incapable person. Ed this ends up accepting, and just wanting to understand what he is wanting to say. Strangely, Ed just replies that it's nothing and decides not to tell for now. Then it's as if he will ask the chefs to prepare the food he wants for the trip. Then the guy enters, warning that the carriage is ready. John says goodbye, saying that he sees him when he returns, but ends up stopping, thinking that maybe Ednet is kind of resigning, so he, I don't know, won't kind of say that too. But in this he asks if there's anything Ed wants, since he shouldn't visit the capital very often either. He's thinking about some special types of food or something that lasts a long time while Ed laughs, thinking that no other superior would care so much about the subordinate. However, he replies that he doesn't need anything. Our boy says that everything is fine, then says goodbye. Ed wishes a good trip while thinking that he respected him more and more. This we see that in that conversation with the king, he said that he didn't want to be a commander. It would be amazing, obviously, but for him it was even more important to be able to help Dan, and he wishes a safe trip while swearing that he will be waiting for him there while he is alive. And, man, I'm finding that something bad is going to happen, right? The next chapter begins with soldiers in front of a castle commenting that the date is boring. But in this, John comes arriving and the guys tell him to stand still, warning that there was Harded's mansion. The count had left and no one was authorized to enter. John, however, just tells them to open the gate and begins to take off his hood while they wonder who this confident boy is. At that moment, Prodina takes off the bandages and says that he wants to enter the house, so what was the problem? At the moment everyone is running and shouting, warning that the count had arrived and bowing at the entrance. Oh my goodness. I thought he was more humiliated at home, wasn't I? He's there thinking this is always unnecessary. The butler, then called Remember, welcomes him back. John smiles, saying it's been a while, and the guy asks if the hunt went well. Hesitant, confused. He says yes. Noticing that everyone thinks he went on a monster hunt. He's about to say everything went well when suddenly Remember touches his little face and says it's a shame the monsters did something like that to him. Hey, Remember, you're not that little maid from the Blondie's construction site to be doing something like this, son. Get lost. The silver-haired one said he's no longer a child, and the guy agrees, saying he's now a respected count. He asks if he wants his room cleaned, and he says no because he first needs to meet the emperor. Obviously, he'd much rather just go to bed and sleep. However, now that he's returning to the empire, he has to talk to this guy first. Besides, he needs to ask about Krule. At this, the butler says he understands and will prepare everything. In an office, a purple-haired guy named Stave Luster says the emperor's dog has finally returned to his master. And he immediately asks Krule next to him what they're going to do now that his little brother is back. He just says he'll send a request to the Assassin's Guild. However, Stave hesitates, saying they might get tracked and asks Seelan if they don't have a better option. Dios wants to know if he's talking about the Revolutionary Army. And he says yes, a group motivated to remove the emperor from his position. Even if they get caught, that's not a problem. Krule says that's fine, then he'll contact these guys. And Stave celebrates, saying he's looking forward to the hero's results. Back at the castle, the maids are all excited, saying our boy looks amazing in that little cape. The boy is completely confused, man. Ever since he arrived, these weirdos haven't stopped for a second. They bathed him, changed his clothes, did a bunch of things. And the worst part is that these weirdos are looking at him, imagining him in various outfits, various poses. He just decides he has to leave quickly and thanks Remember for taking care of the mansion while he was away. He said it was just his job, and in doing so, he also reveals that he was waiting for the boy to return because he's getting quite tired and wants to discuss retirement. Then becomes desperate. He was the only person who could manage this place, considering he does nothing. However, at this, Remember says it was a joke, leaving the boy completely confused with hatred, and tells him to leave quickly. Getting into the carriage, Dion says there isn't much security, as few in the Empire know about his return. Now he's thinking, right, in the demon realm, he had to suck up to the demon king. And now here he'll have to suck up to the emperor. The worst part is that this guy isn't any less intimidating than the demon king. The so-called Edward. Desert is the 9th prince who took the throne by force. He killed all 8 brothers and sisters. Man, he killed the king and took the crown. At least he's deserving, the damn guy. However, obviously, the throne he sits on is stained with blood. And the place that was once known as a nation, from that day on, began to be called the Empire. He was arrogant enough to change the name of this place. And, obviously, the other kingdoms started wanting to start a war. And this war lasted 8 years and turned Dan's life upside down. Such horrible times that he no longer remembers anything. Good thing, because he also has no desire to. During his war, Edward took another 1/3 of the entire continent, right, and turned it all into the so-called empire. Dion, in recognition of his war achievements, received the title of Count. He doesn't quite remember what he did, but he had to fight for his life every day. Now, what he doesn't forget is the life goal he decided on because of that. Although this goal is also what ended up making him enslaved by the demons and the Empire. Amidst all this thought, the carriage begins to shake, and he goes out to see what's happening. Outside, there's a scuffle going on, and Dion is suddenly grabbed by the arm by an eagle. Good thing those guys are easy to recognize as fools, but Dion notices that the fight doesn't seem to be going well for them, and suddenly one of the guys appears beside him. He turns around, and the guy comes with his hand on his neck. The place explodes. At this, he's already fallen into the carriage, and a guy with an axe says he found the Emperor's little dog. The Revolutionary Army was an organization created during the 8-Year War. As kingdoms were brutally conquered, one by one, nothing was left but the will to eliminate the Emperor. And the guy with the scar says it's his end now. John seems to be staring at the guy, not scared of being hanged, but realizes it's the Emperor's fault again. But he wasn't in the mood to die for these guys' ideology. And at this, the guy says he's quite skinny to have the title of hero. John tries to explain that he's not the Emperor's dog. Strangely, the guy lets him go, telling him to say his name. Then, well, our boy, Dion Hart, is the person again, saying he's the disgrace of the dog. White hair, red eyes, weird, just like the rumors say. The silver-haired one tries to attack the distracted guy, but he blocks the stab with the handle of the axe and the guy throws him to the ground again, saying he's done playing. Oh boy, our boy is already getting everything bloody there. While the guy finds it strange that he's considered a hero. Maybe the rumors were false. At this, he swings the axe and tells him to blame the Emperor for what will happen to the fake hero. However, at this, a spear comes. Man, it blocks the attack. The axe falls to the ground. When the scarred one looks back, there are guys laughing, and one of them says he hit the mark perfectly. Apparently, these are the Emperor's guys. Man, he's really scarier than the enemies. These guys in white cloaks were known as the Death Knights. The demons who were led by John Hart since the 8-Year War. The scarred one tells someone to eliminate them while they wonder how these guys are already there. However, one of them just takes something out of his bag and says it's been a while since he had a serious fight. As he consumes something, John says that what's scary isn't their ability, but the irrational way they fought. At this, the guys advance more like a bunch of zombies and start killing with pure cruelty. Man, clearly the army guys were fighting for fun. They were like their master and bloodthirsty. Blood is gushing, and everyone around is scared. While the scarred one remembers why attacking this Dion was always a bad idea. And at this, he feels a strange pain. And, man, Dion's hand is stuck in his arm. He has the kid against the wall, but his arm had turned into a piece of cheese. And, well, it must surely be the other personality. Look at the evil little eyes. Our boy apologizes. He tried to tear his arm off, but he just wasn't strong enough. But he doesn't need to cry, the pain will pass soon. And with this, man, cut, and the body falls to the ground. At this, the silver-haired one gets out of the carriage with swag in that white, blood-soaked outfit. He picks up the axe, thinking this guy is dead. Should he continue? However, this didn't seem enough. He had to make an example of him to show what happens to those who mess with him. And with this, son. The boy is truly brutal, oh my god. He starts a series of attacks, saying he has to show an unforgettable scene for everyone. The so-called Death Knights just think that, as always, the captain has no mercy. Man, the blondie even comments that they shouldn't have come. But the other one tells him to look at the trash that was near him. At this, the guys are all there, right, quite dejected. While the protagonist, man, apparently disintegrated the guy, asks why they are standing. They still had some enemies left, and they were supposed to kill the poor guys in front of them, who were trembling more than anything, and apparently the ride was good because they are back at the castle, and everyone is scared to see the red carriage. Some guys warn that this is the Imperial Castle, and you can't enter without an invitation, but the protagonist just says the name of a heart and says he's going to see the Emperor. Immediately the guys beg for forgiveness. Man, he just tells them to say where he is, and they say he's in the ballroom. He tells them why, and they say he's celebrating a festival there because of the birth of the new hero, and his successful battle. Oh boy, the protagonist is still in time to celebrate the arrival of a new hero with the crazy guy. This is because, you know, he knows it's his big brother who's there. Now I'm wondering until when Krule beat the protagonist, right? Because, eventually, when he created that crazy personality, he must have been beaten many times. He switched to the king's throne, Edward Desert, reviewing everything Krule did. He replies that he only did what was necessary. However, the emperor rises and raises a glass to the success of the first mission, and everyone starts celebrating. When suddenly the door opens, father and Dion enter. Some guys will want to tell him not to enter, that it's unacceptable. However, some already recognize the red eyes and white hair. The people who must be sisters are all scared. It was the honorary count of a heart. Now I understand, so he's not even part of the imperial family, right? He's really like an army killer. He passes by Krule, thinking that this guy actually managed to get a hero's fragment. At this, he bows to the emperor and wishes glory to the empire, presenting himself to your majesty. The nobles around tell him to look at the blood. It was no wonder he was called the vampire count. One knows how he was created, but rumors say the hearts didn't take very good care of the boy. Stave with the purple hair is there, saying that the damn Dion actually survived. He was a difficult guy to kill. At this moment, the emperor looks around, and man, our silver-haired one left a trail of blood, and this brought a bucket into his pocket. He welcomes the honorary one, Dion, and says he's always free to come whenever he wants, but not covered in blood in the middle of a party. What insolence was this? The protagonist apologizes, but says he fell into an ambush on the way there. The emperor laughs, wanting to know who had the courage to attack the empire's hero, while thinking that it's good he sent those knights to protect the boy. The protagonist remains silent. At this, the emperor rises, saying he must have a lot to say. He also has things to say, so perhaps they will have to talk somewhere else. Our little protagonist is really the Demon King's lackey, and the emperor's lackey, right? The boy is in a peculiar situation, and in another room, the guy is sure he was attacked by the revolutionary army. He asks if the boy needs a doctor while thinking that John Hart has an extremely negative status. There are many more people in the empire who hate him than like him. However, it's undeniable that no one did more for the empire than Don Hart, as in the Eighth War, it was he who achieved things that couldn't even be described in words. Besides, during the first hero's attack, only he managed to bring the body back. The only one who survived the demons. This is because everyone else became food for monsters. If it weren't for John Hart, the warrior would have met the same fate. He was the first to survive something related to the Demon King, but obviously, it came at a price. Initially, he asks if he found a way to break the curse. That's that mark the Demon King put on him. And he says unfortunately not. The emperor doesn't know, right? This is tracking. Magic to know where he is. However, Edward believes this is a magic circle that makes him weaker. The emperor notices that the boy really doesn't care about his own well-being. He sent him to the demon realm because that was the only way for him to remove this thing from his chest. At this moment, the emperor then replies that he will have to return to the demon realm, even though he feels bad about sending someone so talented again. John knows this guy says this, but he's just using him as a spy. And at this, Edward wants to know how the Demon King is these days. He replies that nothing has changed, except for a small detail. He tells him to say it, and our boy talks about that assassin he had sent. Apparently, he just wanted to get rid of that person. But he was a candidate for hero. So why send someone like that to the demon realm? Edward says that guy was a disgrace to heroes. He thought he would die long before reaching the demon realm. However, apparently, the fragment really led him there. It's good that he died long before they revealed Den's plan. Or rather, the commander of the Zerov troop, Dion. The protagonist. I'm impressed that the guy already knows this. He then stands up and says that it was impossible to refuse the position of commander. Unfortunately, he ended up having to assume the role. The guy says there's no problem at all. The more assimilated he is with that group, the more intelligence he will gather. So now he wants to know, right, what the boy is there to ask. Naren wants to know why Krule Hart became a hero. He should know very well that the only regret he has from the war is not killing this guy when he had the chance. Oh boy, besides our protagonist, he's the only survivor of the Hart family. Oh whoa, the only survivor of him. The boy killed his father and mother. Well, if he suffered a lot of abuse, maybe, right? But Krule is there talking to him as a child, saying he can't keep the parents waiting. The boy, all cute, apologizes, asks if it's time for food, and he tells him to bring it quickly. The silver-haired one, however, seems hesitant, wondering if they won't get into trouble, or something like that. However, the brother pulls off his hand and tells him not to touch, saying he's dirty because he just came from training. A bit crooked, Dion apologizes while asking Krule to wait a moment. He wanted to walk alongside, but the kid just keeps running when suddenly the protagonist ends up headbutting his back. The brother asks if he likes that painting so much. He always looks at it because he answers yes. It showed that they are a family. The guy doesn't seem to agree, saying it's just any painting. Then he tells the boy to stop appearing so much and spend more time in his room. Dion always felt lonely in that house. The servants in the corridors comment that he was different from everyone else. For some reason, he had white hair and red eyes that were strange. Probably not a biological son. Or anything like that. However, for the boy, when he saw that painting, he felt like part of the family. He would have preferred to have black hair and green eyes too, which was the signature of the Hart family. In front of the table, the father says Dion is late and warns that he told them to come quickly. While the mother asks if Dion is okay, if he had a fever or anything like that, he could stay home that night. He, however, says no, he wants to go along. The father tells the wife to stop offering this, saying that Dion can't stay home forever. She, however, says there's no way not to worry. He was extremely fragile, and something could happen if he went out. However, the father just gets more stressed, saying he can't keep coddling him forever. Eventually, he'll have to show his face in public, even if it means creating rumors. And at this, he also warns Dan that he has to be extremely careful never to let anyone discover his defect. The protagonist, head bowed, says he understands and will be careful. That defect is his different appearance, and always being sick. And also the fact that this ends up damaging the reputation of the Hart family. At this, Krule asks about the new fencing teacher. And John wonders if the brother changed the subject intentionally, right, to stop focusing so much on him. The father laughs and says yes, especially since Krule is improving every day. The moment he mentioned such a teacher, the atmosphere at dinner changed. At that time, he was sure his brother was amazing. However, even so, he wondered if he couldn't feel like part of this family because he wasn't good enough. However, his plan was to train hard and become strong enough to be as good as his brother. And when that happened, the family would love him. Walking in the corridors, someone calls him. And it's some weird nobles, right, asking if it's John Hart. Surely these three fools must have been cut down in the war 18 years ago. The protagonist, poor thing. Stubborn, all dumb, didn't see the malice, thought they were friends wanting to talk, right? Oh. Hey, I'm John Hart. The kid was about to talk about fencing, but the noble in front asked why he's always alone. Apparently he was quite stupid, because everyone knows he's the black sheep of the Hart family, who is always hidden and confined to rooms. The poor protagonist is going to say it's a lie, but a human approaches and says this red eye is extremely strange. Clearly, he's not part of this family, and that's why he shouldn't receive love and should have been abandoned. The guy will say he's a stranger again, but now he punches him, man. He tells him to be careful what he says, saying the family takes very good care of him. Yes, but then he gets punched in the face again. But that's okay, right? At least he hit him before. I respect that. Now he's being told that he's not a real Hart, but a fucking monster. John is just thinking about his family. At this, he's lying on the ground, all crookedly passed out, seeing Krule arriving, scared. Then it switches to the infirmary with a doctor saying that his body is naturally very fragile. He was very vulnerable to stress, and anything around him could affect his health. The parents are somewhat shaken, saying that there has never been anyone like this in the Hart family, so how is this possible? While the little protagonist is in bed, man, almost dead, he mentally apologizes. Looking at the two, he swears he'll try his best and just asks them not to hate him. However, his brother, all cute, son, comes and says it's okay. He didn't have to prove anything to anyone. Oh boy, because no one expected anything from him. Strange. What is this, son? Oh, okay. All of this was a dream. And now, yes, he woke up in bed. And his mother comes into the room asking what happened while his father says he warned him to be careful while they were away from home. The little protagonist hesitantly explains that the guys started it. He remembers the damn guys calling him a monster, but now he wonders if his father will care if he says this, especially since perhaps he thinks the same thing as these children. He apologizes, and at this, the father says that perhaps leaving his room was too premature. Really, he'll be confined for a while longer. It's best he doesn't leave this place and think very carefully about what he did. The protagonist believes that with the chance he had to leave, he went and caused more problems. All he didn't want was to become a disgrace to the family. From inside the room, writing, he hears some voices around saying they pity him because he never leaves this place. He hears the family laughing, goes to the window, and sees his father walking with Krule. He wanted to leave, but at the same time, that would be too greedy. First, to have that right, he had to work hard until he was recognized. Part 1 of the plan was to start building his stamina and endure for 30 minutes of practice. However, it was already night, and he said he was tired, feeling like he could die, but he couldn't stop. He continues to swing the sword until Krule suddenly appears, telling him to stop. Only now does John notice his presence there, and his brother asks what he thinks he's doing. He should stop being stupid, because he already told him to stay quiet in his room and also said that he doesn't need to do anything. However, the protagonist wasn't willing to even have the right to try. Perhaps they didn't want this because he was a failure. Suddenly he says it's okay, he won't do anything. He apologizes to Krule and says he's going to rest and tells him to leave. He stands by the window, wondering what he has to do to receive the right to be loved. A while later, the butler arrives, asking if he's going to eat in his room again. The protagonist, who is now 14 years old, asks where everyone is. Krule, now 17, says they went out for something else. John thought he was training, but Krule just tells him to come quickly because he's already finished his morning training, and it's time for chess. The protagonist says he'll accept the order, while Krule wonders why he's so polite. It seems that from time to time he comes for this chess match. At this, Krule says the Empire is going through a turbulent time, and that's why the relatives are very busy. The uncle, however, is sure that he always says this just to give them a reason not to visit him. However, even though he knew this, he decided from time to time to believe this lie. This is because rarely, but still, his mother sometimes appears there, and thinks he's sleeping. She puts her hand on him, apologizes, and tells him to sleep well. The boy, poor thing, all cute there, cries emotionally, saying he had already decided not to expect any love, but any reaction gave him hope. At this moment, Krule reveals that after this match, he'll also stop playing chess for a while. The protagonist replies that he knows, right? It must be quite a hassle to come here and play chess all the time. Krule says no. It's because if a war starts, one less person from the family needs to be taken. Well, when he says this, two guys enter. Man, surely the protagonist was sent in the end, or not, right? Now I'm curious, damn it. Krule asks why they are there, and the soldier informs them that they are bringing a message from the Empire. Where is the boy called Dion Hart? Yes, right, man, the family imprisoned the boy and will now send him to his death to avoid sending Krule. Love, we realize it's the boy in the chair opposite Krule. At this moment, the Empire guy tells him to come along, and they will explain on the way. As he is pulled from the room, the other knights wonder why they're taking a boy who doesn't even know how to hold a sword. But in this, Krule grabs the guy's arm and says that something is wrong. Dion wasn't the person who had to be sent. It must be a misunderstanding. However, the guy pulls the hand away and warns that the Hart family had already sent an official letter to the Emperor. They are there doing their job, and if he has any questions, he should talk to his parents. While being taken, the protagonist understands what they are talking about. From what he could capture in the air, it seems that he's being sent by his parents to the war. However, he is someone who spent his whole life sick in his room. So, what is he going to do in a place like that? He just imagines his mother, all sinister, apologizing while thinking it's impossible. They would never do something like that. He looks back calling for Krule, but the door has already closed. At that moment he wonders if everyone in the royal family really wanted him to die. Maybe for them it was better to get rid of the failure, which was a disgrace to the name. Dude, I want to understand how everything connects later, right? Now I'm a bit confused. However, we are already with him there, all twisted holding a sword, while the army guy says that it's good for him to strengthen himself if he wants to survive on the battlefield. Oh, Pertinat, however, poor thing, was just thinking that the broadsword is too heavy. Oh, man, however, obviously, even the soldiers around are commenting, wanting to know why the disgrace of the Hart family was sent. The sick boy who never participated in anything. Our guy on the other hand, all he didn't want was to die. However, from that day on, his life became hell and we are already with him there in the middle of the battlefield all twisted. Damn, the kid was thrown into the war itself, ho. There was death all around, bodies falling on top of him and he was only afraid of dying. Listening to the screams. And the smell of blood. He was there lying under one of the bodies screaming that he wants to go home when one of the army guys approaches, and gives him a cut on the guy who was on top. Already tells him to get up right away, pick up the sword and do something. If he didn't know just the sword, use his teeth or use a dagger. Whatever. He just had to fight to survive. The poor guy is having a panic attack there, saying that he can't die that way. Oh man, the craziness started, saying that he's going to survive. And that's how he started killing here, killing there, killing to the other side. Sometimes he was scared, with the blood, he wondered until when that body was going to hold up. He wanted to know when he was going to be able to go home, and why he had to be there. However, in this he stabs another in the chest. Clearly this boy has some natural talent, right? Because you don't throw a 14-year-old kid and he stays alive there on the battlefield. However, obviously, years are passing while he's just surviving. From time to time some letters would arrive for the people on the front lines. Message saying that he hopes he's doing well, he misses them, that kind of thing. However, our guy there, right, in the solitude of the corner. The only letter he received is one that he was promoted to commander, and was now going to enter the other front line. Man, it was then that he decided to turn the Hart family into a house of horrors. And the evil is going to start now because the door opens, and he enters with the butler. Who is the butler? And he says that he has finally arrived to pay his respects. What is this, son? The father went to say something. He already killed him. That family was right to send that kid away. Their only mistake was not disappearing from that house. He could have given love too, but it was very difficult, man. He says goodbye and give him another cut. Damn, he celebrates that it's resolved. He's laughing like the Joker. There with his hand on his face, saying it's deserved. They should never have abandoned him that way and given the love that he wanted so much. At that moment, however, he wonders why it hurts so much if he finally realized what he had been dreaming of for so long. At that moment, Krule opens the door and sees the boy there crazy and crying, who obviously gets a fright and asks what he thinks he did. At that moment, however, the protagonist asks for help, but suddenly he stops and the other voice asks if he really thinks Krule will help in any way. The boy then agrees and then he attacks Krule, who has to defend himself. Crazy, the pro says that he always watched everything. While the fight goes on, he says he's in too much pain, and remembers everything he's been through. when suddenly he looks at his bloodied hand and realizes that he's at the limit of the body. Krule comes for the final attack, and all he wanted was to kill him before he died. However, suddenly he wakes up and now I don't know if it was a panic attack or what happened, right? Another beautiful thing called Lean Hainer wants to know what he's thinking. He says that it's been a while since they've seen each other, and she replies that it's good to know that he's doing so well. For him, she was the only person with a normal personality in this bunch of psychopaths, and he's happy to see her again. However, it's in this that he notices that he's in the Vol's room and is all confused, not understanding what happened. Understand. We're back at the king's party where he arrived bloodied, and he only remembers being attacked by the revolutionary people in the carriage. So, right, we're back in the timeline of the story. I thought that was kind of a false memory, but no. I think he really killed everyone. Elian is asking about the conversation with the Emperor, saying that he doesn't seem very well after that. Obviously he has no idea what conversation she's talking about, and only thinks that, apparently, his stress has reached its limit. He fainted again. He then wants to know what's going on at this event, because she replies that he must be kidding not to know, right? How does he enter the place without having any idea? They were there to celebrate the first victory of Cruel Heart, who at that moment seems to say that it's good to see Dion. The Peta replies that now it's explained why he had terrible dreams last night. He says it's been a while since they've seen each other while thinking that the damn thing had a green eye, and the little black hair that he wanted, the symbol of the heart house that he thought he would never see again, and also the person he didn't want to see. At that moment, Krule replies that he came face to face with the commander of Xeraphis in the demonic realm. The pro asks what the problem is while wanting to know, right, if the human has any idea that that was him. Krule, however, says that that person was good at motivating the soldiers and, somehow, reminded him of Dan. He had never seen troops so animated as that. He learned that his brother has always been a good commander. He wonders if they wouldn't be better off with him. John, however, again, starts laughing like the Joker, apologizing, saying that he thinks he's exaggerating, because there's no world in which they would fight side by side. Krule just replies that everything is fine while noticing that the boy's eyes hadn't changed at all. He had an indifferent look to anyone. The pro, however, just turns with the hatred of this bastard who came to talk to him. He turns saying that he has more things to solve, so it's good not to fill his sack. He went there, ate some pudding thinking that this party is a mess. He just wants to leave. However, why is this cruel bastard talking to him? He doesn't want to talk to this person. But in this, Krule asks if he's hurt. The prot interrupts, saying that today he's filling his sack. He can take care of himself, so he doesn't need to pretend that he cares about him after so long. Because, whenever he's been hurt, he's had to pretend that he's fine and they can maintain silence between them, as they always have. My mood clearly isn't animated. While Krule, all twisted, is going to say something, but suddenly Steve appears saying that his heart gets warm, comes into love between hands like that. The prot remembers that this guy is the head in opposition of the nobles against the emperor. Krule's welcome, and the guy said that everything is fine. At that moment he introduces himself to Diamond and said that he heard a lot about him, so it's a pleasure. The however, gives that look at the hand and turns around. It seems that everyone at the party was scared that he ignored the dude. Man, there are only annoying people in this empire too. It was better there in the demon realm. At least there was Milfa Lolly. Not that I'm a fan of Lolly. No, Fi doesn't do that. Everyone at the party commenting, and the so-called Stev is there without saying anything. However, J ignores and turns. He says he doesn't care about anything. Not even hell that he's going to talk to that pudding in his mouth and drool everything. It would be a shame. Now I don't understand, right? That he's very bold for his silly personality. In this he realizes that the guy is angry and decides, right, to greet him before things get worse. However, suddenly the crown prince, who must be the son of Dido Eduardo there, called Euphetos, appears and calls for the duke. The prota is there chewing, wondering if he went out with Ani today by any chance, for not stopping people from coming to his side. The sons comment that the place is a mess today and Steve apologizes for being there. The guy replies that he doesn't have to worry, it's all right. In addition, it's his fault that they don't see each other for longer. However, inside, he's wondering why Steven is coming to talk to Dion. He couldn't let this guy continue with his plans. Apparently, he's motivated to protect our boy at any cost, and I don't even know why. Suddenly another person comes and embraces our boy. Finally a passionate little brat on this side of the world too, son. Alitia Desert said she missed our boy so much. However, everyone turns to scare because this hug of hers made the boy spit out a pool of blood. Everyone is already calling the doctors that our boy had taken critical damage. Does she have such a powerful commission? But normally the R-bag, right, to reduce the impact, not increase it. Alienta covering his mouth, telling him not to speak so that more blood doesn't come out when the emperor appears with the first hero beside him, also one of the generals known as Nemesis. Man, the names of the guys are Nemesis, Krule, it's all evil people. And Alitia is all twisted, apologizing, saying that it's because of her, she couldn't control the force. Her brother apologizes, so the emperor says that a great hero like Dion wasn't going to bleed because of a hug. Clearly he was already injured. He was going to attack on the way and is carrying some internal ferments. The pro, however, doesn't understand what's going on. A lot of people appearing, talking about him, talking while he just wanted to stay quiet and leave. The emperor suggests the magic, but he says he's already okay. And now other people are commenting that maybe it's because of the Demon King's curse that he's so weak. It seems that for our boy he wants them to really believe that. So he asks for a license and says he's leaving. As far as I understand, he went crazy, right? And he already had a crazy personality and created this new good personality to hide the evil, right? I think that's it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this is a work that we have to keep assuming at all times, right, man? Because it's kind of the intent of the thing. But in this, our boy who is asking for a license is going to pass out when suddenly Krule saves the boy by the arm. Oh, hell, each one is delicious. However, he slaps him, tells him to get away and warns that he doesn't need his help. During the years of him on the battlefield, he hated this guy with every fiber of his body. So, why does this bastard have the audacity to pretend that he cares? The emperor asks him to calm down, says that he's not very well and warns that going home is really the best option. The pro realizes that this is kind of an indirect expulsion. Normally he would come as an insult, but as this place is terrible, he just asks for a license. He closes the door and the general stays there in silence, man. And Stave is just staring at Krule. Which I'm still trying to understand why he likes the protagonist if he knows that he killed his parents, right? Caught in the act. Apparently, right. It's no wonder his name is Krule. Already from the outside, Steve is telling Krule that he was treated extremely disrespectfully by his brother. In addition, even though he caused countless messes, the emperor didn't do anything, not to mention that Krule himself seemed very lenient with the boy. He replies that he didn't want to ruin the atmosphere, but Steve says that he's not understanding things wrong. He knew well what state of mind he was in when he came to that conversation. At that moment we see that Krule asked to be sponsored by Steven, who in front of him saw a man who lost his relatives and his house at the hands of his own younger brother. And Krule swore that if the guy was his patron, he would be the best sword he would have within reach. Oh, Steve knew that his guy wanted to survive. There were other paths he could follow. Then he replies that everything is fine. He's not an idiot to kick a dog who's eager to serve an owner. However, he wants to know why he has it. Krule said that this time he wanted to be the protector. Yeah, I didn't understand very well. Ah, exactly, right. Steve replies that he never understood why he wanted to be it. Protector, but now he understands that he's wanting to protect himself. Oh crazy, he's afraid of the day of a boy. Oops, Krule lowers his head, saying yes. Oops, he's in shock, super shock. And Steve says that both are on the same path of eliminating the Empire's dog. While Steve with his hand on his chest thinks that this is extremely important. The tight heart he feels indicates that that guy was a threat to everything, and he swears that one day he will kill him. Already outside the carriage, Ellen wants to know if he needs help and replies that he's fine. Until he looks ahead, seeing that the entire entrance of the house was completely destroyed in flames. In addition, why were the mortal knights there too? He imagines that this must be a dream, a hallucination. The stress has reached its limit. However, man, he has already woken up to reality with the heat on his skin and asks what the hell is going on there. The guys call for a captain, and another says that he's now the count. He can't say he's captain. He's going to ask why the place is a mess when suddenly a bomb falls in his hand. He doesn't understand. Alien tells him to be careful. He throws the thing to the side, exploding another part of the garden, wanting to understand why these damn dogs are doing this. Al asks if he's okay. The guys are worried when suddenly someone comes out of the flames. Oh, man, a guy comes out of the flames and said that the damned one really is a hero. He caught him off guard, but he threw the bomb in the perfect place. He falls on the floor dead. The army guys are impressed that he has already arrived and killed one, while the silver one didn't even know that there was any kind of intruder. In this he sees that once again another attack was directed by the revolutionary army. And the friends of the troop explain that these guys came to destroy his house, so they came quickly to solve it. The pro, however, wants to know why everyone is there. Obviously, they don't understand, especially since they just explained. Is sure that if they're there and they're following him, it's because they must have put themselves in some trouble and lost their positions. The guys, however, seem to get emotional saying that the captain cares a lot about them. Obviously, they had some problems, but not to the point of having been expelled. In this, he tells them to stop disrespecting like that while our guy tries to withdraw. I'll tell you, the boy's life isn't easy either, daughter. Where are you going? There are people filling the sack, for the love of God. And has to be careful now that the army not only attacked his carriage, but tried to ambush him in his own house. They were certainly well determined to kill him. In this he notices that there is a survivor of the revolutionary army who at that moment gets up and tries to run away. The pro needed information, and had to capture one of the two. And in this, man, the butler, remember, already appears, throws one on the ground and raises the other, warning that they almost escape. Clearly, it wasn't a normal butler either who replies that he's impressed with the Lord. He thought something terrible was going to happen, since he learned of the attack on the carriage. Also asks if anything happened at the palace, because he seems much more worried than when he left. Man, when he tries to say something, Yuta also appears saying that they were attacked by the Revolutionary Army and now he's shaken. Finally, right. Remember tells him to go up and rest while our guy observes the guy imprisoned who was there in the background swearing that one day Heart was going to die. Yeah, unless he's immortal, I can also swear that. There were 3 people on the way to remove the Emperor from his position. Commander Nemesis, Chancellor Artel and of course, Dion Hart, the man who was the spearhead of the army and also who influenced the 8-year war the most. Not to mention that everything he does is in secret, so it's difficult to calculate any movement. They said he went out to kill the monster hunter, but he's sure it was some other mission. He's going to say something about Dion being a dog of the army when the other grabs him by the go and tells him to shut up. It was because they had fought against the Emperor that they had to submit to that war. The guy is going to want to argue something, but it's too much talk. The guy pulls out the knife and says that it's to let you rest and goodbye. I said dead, man. The butler seeing that only thinks that it's going to be difficult to clean up all this mess today. The next chapter begins in an empty, poor city, with the girl going hungry, remembering that she hadn't had anything to eat since that day. However, there was the favela. It's not like crying was going to make anything fall on her plate. But in this one of the friends appears and says that he got a little bread. He came from the Church of Salvation that usually gives water and even some other things for free. The girl replies that it's impossible. Surely there must be drugs or something wrong there. Because he tells her to stop being ridiculous. The guy who was crippled from the house next door ate it and said it was good. The girl insists, saying that that guy was going to eat even things with drugs and he tells her to stop having so many doubts like that. The guy's delivered it after he said that she's been starving for a week. He tries to take it back, since she doesn't want to eat, and she snatches it. But she still wonders why they would give food and water for free without asking for anything in return. At that moment the boy gets up and warns that he doesn't trust anymore. He's going there, man, to bring more bread again. While thinking that if they put poison in the bread, it'll be all the same to them. Yeah, I think that way you die, right, friend? But it's okay. The girl gets up in this, calls out to the guy and says she's going to go with him. If that person was really giving food like he said, it was the only way for them to survive. Back in a castle. It's been a week since John arrived in the Empire. The place has already been restored and now the mortal knights, right, that they call the crazy dogs, came to work with him for now, in an unexpected way. He doesn't even know why the plan was to take advantage of the human realm, since the Emperor didn't call him. However, he's full of paperwork to solve, since he's been away for a long time. The Prota asks, who was the idiot who approved the disgrace of a dam in the Empire that's going to cost time and money to build? Remember replies that it was him and at that moment our guy agrees, saying that it's an incredible idea, it's approved. Since he saw Remember killing those guys, he decided not to be too against him, no. In addition, it's good to let him take care of all the things himself. He hears some shouting and goes to the side of the window, sees some guys fighting. It was the crazy dogs there that his white troop against the Empire guys who always cause trouble. Our guy wants to know if these damn roadie knights have nothing to do. The butler explains to me that the Emperor always gave missions, but now that they're with Dion and he didn't say anything, right? They are there standing still, kind of just training and causing trouble. The Silver One, however, didn't want to have to command those guys. But Remember says that it's obvious that he received this because the Majesty cares deeply about him. No emperor would risk putting such a powerful troop in another distant house like this, since this would easily result in treason. This demonstrates the consideration and trust that he has in the boy. John, however, is sure that the Emperor sent these wretches back because he must have realized how bad it is to manage them. This also wants to know why there is so much paperwork to solve. He had handed over the hit region to the Emperor since that day. If that guy really cares about him, he should take care of this place and leave him empty-handed. In this, Remember comments that, apparently, he doesn't know, but it's been a while since the Majesty had put him as the sole owner of the Heart Empire. The Pro is there scared, wanting to know why the damn Emperor did this. While Remember warns that the official news must be arriving soon. The Silver One already gets up. He wants a way to return this house. When he received the title of Count, he kind of wanted to refuse, because he didn't want to serve as Margrave, which by the explanation here, the Margrave is a count who has a land that is connected to another country, but he's treated as a marquis. What did I understand from this? I don't know, but I know that you're leaning against the enemies. And the reason for our Pro not wanting this land is because obviously he has no good memories of this place. In fact, only the worst are there. In this he says that he won't accept this place. No. He's going to talk to the Emperor, and give everything back. However, in this, someone warns that the Crown Prince and General Nimizu were there to see him. Obviously, Dinho doesn't know why these two are wanting to talk to him. Nemesis hates him, so why did he come there? The general is in the middle of the room looking at the frame all scratched and wondering if the boy really wanted to bring this when he built the new mansion. Someone welcomes and Elfildus already apologizes for the sudden visit, but he needed to have a little chat with the count. In this we see a little earlier with Aletia sad. Upon discovering that our boy's house was attacked. At least he has a very beautiful fan in this place, right? And her brother tells her not to be so sad. She, however, puts her hand on her face and says that she knows that he's never going to want to see her again. All the hard work that she had done had been wasted. She gets up and tells her brother to say that she's beautiful. She knows that she's a princess, and she can never make the first move. She might be a bit skillless, but she also didn't want to cause problems. Apparently she's clearly wanting to win over our guy there. I don't know, right? The brother was saying that he has already made it clear that it's not her fault. Even though she really did attack the boy with full force. She says she's going to apologize and he questions if she's wanting to go see him. When she agrees, at that moment the brother says no. Normally he even lets her do what she wants, but this time it was a completely different matter. If she saw him or if he went there to see her, all this would result in a scandal. The weirdo says that this way it would be easier for them to get married, but at that moment he interrupts. He knows that she's a princess who thinks like an innocent of a stupid person. And in this she says that he's sure that she doesn't love him. You understand. The vision that she is an innocent and stupid person is what she pretends for everyone. Yes. And she's there with the evil face saying that yes, she doesn't love him, but it's going to be easy to make him useful to everyone. Oh, man. Another weirdo, right? Let my boy live a peaceful life. That's why he's so troubled with two personalities. And Elphos says that if she shows all that audacity, no one will believe anymore that she's a silly girl. If she's wanting to lose that title, he doesn't care. However, she replies that she doesn't. She prefers to do everything possible. She can't give the nobles a chance to want to fight, but still for them to have the throne. In addition, all the work that she has been doing towards the count has not been in vain. She expressed her intention towards him and everyone found out. Which means that no other girl is going to try to get her hands on him. If this was necessary to keep someone as talented as him, faithful to the emperor, she accepts. The brother, however, just strokes her head. He says she's a very caring girl. He knows that she has a good reason for everything she does, but he has already warned numerous times that she can stop it whenever she wants. At the same time that she's cute there laughing, saying that she understood. This girl is clearly evil, right? And she then asks her brother to find out what Dion thinks of her. This is because she doesn't want the Empire's treasure angry with what she did. And now we're there at the meeting, right? Clearly it's not the most important thing in the world, but he needed to ensure that the boy would stay in the Emperor's home. While the protagonist is wondering what these two guys are doing there. We see, right, that he received them all politely. You've said that there's no problem, he could sit down. Our boy at that moment wanted to know the reason for the visit, and the blondie says that he has something to say, as does the general, but it's going to be quick. The two give each other a look there. Our protagonist doesn't seem very excited. That crazy one looks like he's going to leave a hole. Oh, but our boy knows that when the prince says that there's nothing too much it's because trouble is coming. Our Fides comments about that incident at the celebration, when Aletia crossed the line with him. He remembers Gaspen and says that everything is fine, and the guy thanks him for not having taken that as an offense. Why that surprised the Silver One, he knows that she was kind of showing affection, so he doesn't care much. At that moment, Fido says that he has a personal favor to ask him. The Silver One is hesitating, and the guy says that if everything is fine he wants him to be a friend. Geez, poor Pertenho. The guide is coming with the greatest falseness. Our boy is already all silly. He says he wants to know the best senator Dion, but he's very busy, right? So they barely have a chance to see each other. The Silver One is a bit confused, wanting to know if this is the subject for which he came to talk. Because he replies that when you're the crown prince, there are many things that you can't do, including one of them, is visiting a person you want to be your friend. And that's why he used the incident of the celebration as an excuse to come and talk. Yes, he's playing the I'm so cute, friendly, but you're a son of a... And whoa. Oh whoa. However, Dion says that he is extremely grateful for the offer. It's just that when he's going to speak, the general is giving that look. And then he replies that it would be an honor to be a friend of the great prince, who at that moment gets all excited saying that from now on they are friends and they are going to get closer. He's very happy, I don't know what else. However, Dan clearly isn't that excited. Obviously, Aphires isn't an idiot either and noticed that the boy is uncomfortable. He probably only accepted out of empathy, as the rumors said. And he already takes advantage of this to offer even more, saying that he's going to come soon for them to train together, and then have tea. The Silver One is already wanting to refuse. Stop. The prince gets up saying that he has a lot of things to do and now it's decided. Goodbye. He's gone. He's eager to see the buddy soon. The pro, however, didn't want to stay in that room alone with the cursed Nemesis, who at that moment calls for the honorary Count Dion Hart, saying that it's been a while since they talked alone. The protagonist is going to say something, but the guy replies that he's going straight to the point to leave. The Emperor wants him to hand over that revolutionary soldier he had captured. The goal is to find the base of these guys, and exterminate them once and for all. However, since it was Jant and his troops who captured him, he had the freedom to refuse. The prota mentally thanks this guy, and goes straight to the point, and says that he doesn't care. He's going to hand over the person, just follow. Already in front of a cell they take out a guy, the protagonist says that it's him. Nemesis, however, says that he heard that he was attacked by 3 people and 1 died in an explosion. However, the death of the other hadn't been made clear. The protagonist wants to know why he's asking this. And Nemesis would like to say how this last one died. Nemesis then thinks that he doesn't hate people without any reason. During the 8-year war, he discovered nearby the extreme change of personality that he has. The boy was the first noble to become a common soldier, so it was impossible not to notice him. He was fragile, barely managed to get out alive from the first fights and ended up adopting cruelty as a method of survival. This made him start killing all the enemies in a brutal way, and it's certainly one of the reasons for having left him insane. He touches his hands on his shoulder, and tells him to get up, that he's been standing there for 3 days. It wasn't his fault to have done what he did to survive, but he has to accept the results. He noticed that the fault was eating the child little by little and battle by battle. But in this, the boy raises his face and asks what he's talking about. At that moment the general realized that he had some kind of divided nature, or another personality. Jan says that the wounds are fine, and the general wants to comment on the battle, but he looks at him once again that he really has no idea what he's talking about. Nemesis realized that he had this bloodthirsty personality that only cared about surviving and another that was normal that always forgot the horrors he committed. Damn all evil, which we already know that when he's got those dark circles there, right son, is clearly possessed. However, even so he replies that he's too tired to remember what happened. It's just that he was lucky to survive without having to kill anyone. For the general, the boy couldn't bear the weight of his own actions and fled from the result of them in the most extreme and worst possible way. In this, back in the present, he asks if he remembers how the guy died while wondering until when he's going to play the fool. Oh. Then he asks here what he's trying to say with remembering. The general is thinking that if he started to assume, perhaps things would change. However, says that unfortunately he wasn't there, so he doesn't know any details. It seems that some dogs attacked him. At that moment the guy realizes that he's being an idiot and thinking that anything was going to be different. Then he says he's leaving and doesn't need to follow him. Obviously he knows that this business about dogs there was ridiculous. He has no doubt that he killed the soldier and that he must have used that strange personality of his to conveniently do whatever he wants. Weakness in someone with great responsibilities was something catastrophic. For him, the boy was an absolute threat. So why does the Majesty keep him by his side? Not only him, but the Demon King seem to know too, right? There are many pieces moving here. I'm trying to connect. In this, Protonha is back there, right? Saying that he took a nap. He asks how long he's been there and remember said that not much. But he wants to know if the boy is feeling better, right? Because he got a fright when Will fainted. Even though his body is naturally fragile, it's dangerous for him to get so stressed out. The Proto replies that he's fine, he just needs a rest. But in this, Remember said that maybe it would be good to send those crazy dogs to a monster hunt. The Pro thinks that it's not a bad idea, because these guys have been causing countless problems. And Remember comments that there are some monsters circulating on the borders and it would be perfect. Our boy smiles, saying yes, and inside he's all excited. Taking those guys away and being perfect. Alien is already saying goodbye and says that he's going to vent there on the border. Or not, man. I thought he was going to stay in the castle, but in the end he was sent along too. In fact, she's saying that they're already arriving at the border. Our boy wants to know why he has to be there too. Because the guys reply that it's so he doesn't miss out on the fun of this hunt, obviously. However, the Pro wonders who would miss seeing blood. He tried his best not to laugh, but the guys were grabbing his leg, begging. Everyone saying that he couldn't just let them have fun. They were going to help him kill as much as possible. Our guy tried to say that he had something to solve in the castle, but Remember appeared saying not to worry, that he was going to take care of everything as always. He can relax this week. The soldiers were emotional with the kindness, right? And our boy tried to say that Remember, damn it, I don't want to go, no. But in this, the butler explained to me that if he goes, those rats are going to try to follow him, and so it will be even easier to kill whoever is trying to deal with him. In other words, it was a perfect vacation and also solved a problem. Considering everything that's happening, he had no way to say no. In addition, right, if he stayed behind being hunted by everyone, there was a risk of him really dying. One of the army guys tells him to cheer up. He learned that when he came back from the last hunt, he had a big smile. Dion, however, thinks that this big smile is because he was just relaxing there with the demons. And in this, there's already a bunch of or calling, and the army guys leave animated, saying that the time to solve it has arrived. The pro, on the other hand, is already missing the demon realm. He then sees that the line of the home is sighing, and realizes that even she's tired of this. When he asked someone to control the mortal knights, she was the first to be announced. Unlike all these crazy people, she is the personification of what a warrior should be. And in this she's asking if he's not going to join, because he replies that he lets them have plenty of fun there for now. He's very calm, and the guys are really fighting to know who is killing more than the other. They are offering our guy, but he just tells them to continue there in the fun. I'm sure because he had the feeling that if he joined something was going to break. But suddenly he feels something and man took a closure right in his shoulder. Alien screams for him, but he can only think that if he hadn't turned his head, the arrow would have ripped his neck. But, who is the one who made such a crazy ambush as this? Unless it was someone who wants to start a war with the Empire, they wouldn't have the courage. It had to be some kind of assassin from another group who's wanting him dead. From the corner, it's possible to see, hidden among the bushes, a guy preparing an arrow, wondering how he dodged. In this, dear of these guys. He tells her to cut the arrow, which at that moment she obeys, but knows that any movement he makes will cause extreme pain, and make the thing go even further into the arm. The protagonist only calls for the dogs and tells everyone to use the drugs. From the brothers' side the guy observes the war, wanting to know if that there wasn't the hero of the Heart Empire. Utar there beside him says yes, it's the white-haired boy who commands everyone. The guy seems to worry, wanting to know if it's an internal conflict. What's going on? However, seeing that he's hurt, he says that it's been 2 years since the 8-year war. The infamous one of a Hort got hurt, and surely the Empire won't want a new war at this moment. It's just for them to finish them there, and then say that they were attacked without any provocation, and they can even receive compensation. However, down below the guys are all consuming some pill. And Lin wants to know what it is. He says that thing makes your reason be paralyzed, and she comments that this is dangerous and had been banned. But, it's not as if Jihu cuts everyone is caring about that. The cars are hidden, raising their swords and telling them to attack. But he just jumps off the horse and says that there goes the first one. With that, the guy's body is already bathed in blood. He tells the guy to stay still there if he doesn't want to have both legs cut off. He warns the army that one was captured, and now the rest can be killed. With this, the whole troop advances, and the guys are completely decimated. He tells them to keep an eye on the fallen one, and not let him escape. However, at that moment, he sees one of the soldiers hesitating there to give the final sword to the guy. This is because the rest were dead, and this guy there, right, seemed like he was going to die anyway. However, in this, John advances, gives about 50 cuts to the guy and says that they have been fighting for 8 years like dogs. So why did they suddenly think they could become humans again? Really, they were still pathetic and didn't have the slightest chance of surviving. He has already taught countless times that you can't show pity. Everything they do is in pro. The guy who attacked realizes that he made a mistake. Surely they were chopped up because the scene changes to Krule. For what the butler is asking why he only gave half of the reward just because they had hurt him. The Duke had already made his intentions very clear. Krule replies that he knows that the intention was to kill. He just added a condition, so everything is fine. The butler insists, saying that Dion had to be killed, so why did he use their money for a condition like that? Krule replies that he assumes the responsibility, he doesn't have to worry. The guide is wondering why the person who should hate Dion more than anyone else acts like this, and it wouldn't make any sense at all. While Krule thinks that if someone is going to decide the end of that kid it will be him. In other words, he's protecting him because he wants to be the person who kills Dion. Apparently, the Count offered an offer and he kind of made a secret offer to earn half of the reward just for causing an injury on the battlefield. However, the pro is there cutting general, while someone on the side says that this is the worst scene he has ever done. The man with red eyes didn't in any way seem like a hero of the Empire. It wasn't for that they were going to be paid. And now it was explained why this group of knights had that name. It was clear that they weren't humans but demons. To be honest, in this story here, the demons are the most decent people. In the beginning, J approaches and asks if the guy is desperate for money, stupid, or both, driving the knife in and stomping. He then says that he doesn't like to torture for hours and hours. So how about he tell us right away who is the person who sent him to do this, and they solve everything. The scene changes to someone warning the Emperor that the Frieren had sent a complaint, because Den had gone hunting near their border. It seems that the troops were forced to retaliate, and now his realm is warning that this is a military invasion. The Emperor, however, just wants to know, right? If the boy was ambushed, he's okay. The guy explains that he's alive, but he took an arrow in the shoulder and won't fight right for a month. The Emperor asks if the damned are asking for compensation, and he says yes. At that moment he knows. These guys think that because they hurt Dan, they wouldn't have the courage to start a war. It was a pity that they were as idiotic as they were weak. Apparently, he has been taking it easy in these last few years. The informant is desperate, saying that they can just say that it was them who orchestrated this ambush instead of starting something. However, the Eduardo just tells them to prepare for war. Obviously, the two already take a fright and ask him to reconsider. It's been 2 years since an 8-year war ended. No one wants to wage war again. They were without money, but the emperor says that as they conquer everything, the money comes. If they waged an 8-year war, there's no reason for them not to be able to do another one. The chancellor says that the troops aren't prepared, that the people wouldn't want this, but he just warns that he was a tyrant. He was already planning to conquer the rest of the continent, and the time is perfect. The moment he killed all the brothers and sisters, he had already decided that he was going to follow this path. He's not willing to go back, no matter how much this has now become an albatross. The albatross that at the moment asks for another catastrophe. The Chancellor Toll thought that there's nothing wrong with someone wanting to complete the responsibilities that he defined for himself. However, clearly the priorities of this guy were lamentable. Everything he is for is that if these catastrophes really happen, the Empire isn't affected. The Chancellor is leaving, and at that moment the Emperor asks Nemesis if he knows about the Church of Salvation. The guy comments if it's not that cult that's gaining an absurd amount of followers from the favelas recently. She understands that this is almost natural, since people in difficult moments in this country wanted to depend on religion. The Emperor agrees, it's just that these guys have gotten too big, and it would be good to eliminate all this force before a war started. He wonders if it wouldn't be a good idea to put Dan to solve this as punishment for the problem he caused. Even with his arm injured, eliminating the cult would be easy. However, Nemesis at that moment says that he refuses to do that. The boy was too dangerous. Eduardo wants to know if he's so concerned because he's unnecessarily brutal. For what Nemesis says that isn't even the problem, but rather the way he tries to survive. The boy had 2 personalities, and his mental strength was as resistant as a sandcastle. The worst thing would be to put him in a situation that would break completely. However, the Emperor just laughs and says that he already knows this very well. Obviously, the commander wants to know why then. Because the guy replies that that's John's fault. If he does something, he will also be responsible for that. Nemesis insists, saying that a broken sword eventually hurts the master. He shares the responsibility of what the boy does. It's just that Eduardo doesn't care, and says that doesn't matter. All this was part of the life of an emperor, and tells the guy to stop. That's enough. He has already assumed his role as a tyrant, but from time to time he's a good leader for the people he likes, and that's the only reason he would let this insolence pass this time. He's not going to punish his subordinate because of something so silly. And Nemesis already felt the race, right man? Already asked for forgiveness. Then the Emperor tells him to relax. He wasn't going to keep someone so dangerous by his side if he didn't have a good reason. Man, we see in the past John asking permission to exterminate his family. At that moment, the Emperor clearly felt the hatred of that boy. Someone with extreme talent, but who was thrown at 14 years old into the war, without knowing absolutely anything, and spent 8 years in it. At the moment he came back from the battlefield. After everything, this was the first request. The Emperor replies that the hearts hate him for having taken the throne by force, so he has no reason to say no, but asks if the boy thought he was worthy enough for the fall of a prestigious family. At that moment, the Emperor had decided to use him as a sword that would have to be forged. Dan just wanted to know what was necessary to do. And it was then that Eduardo commented about the hero who was going on the mission to kill the Demon King, and asked why he wouldn't accompany him. For him, this plan was perfect, and the result with the warrior's death was a success. He returned with that guy's body, and the Emperor says that it was a splendid job. He asks if he hasn't changed his mind, but he replies that he hasn't. In the end, the Emperor had no way to deny that he's a hero, even if he didn't possess the fragment. It's just that Orlon comments that perhaps the Heart Mansion won't be silent tonight. And man, at that moment Pertinho just thanked him. Phi. That's how the cruelty began. However, they say in the story that destiny is something mysterious. And when Krule returned later that night, he saw the scene of Diamond having killed everyone in the house. And the worst of all is that he survived. The Emperor comments that in the end Krule became a great way to keep Dion in his place. Because that way Dion killed the family without the Emperor ordering anything. Right, man. He just authorized it. It's just that Krule remained, and if he wants to kill his older brother, he's going to need the Emperor's help. While Krule, on the other hand, is working for that Duke, which is his own way of survival. Both have become each other's leash. While Krule is alive, Dion will remain by his side. Yeah, man, I'm finding that soon the boy's going to kill you too, but it's okay. In the next chapter, our boy is being pulled by bodies from all sides and asking what this is. The voice tells him to let the madness go or dominate, saying everything they do is for survival. The protagonist covers his ears, trying to calm down, but the shadow comes from behind, covers his face, and tells him not to think about it. He has to accept that in the end, he was ignored by his family while he was always here. Suddenly he wakes up, wondering if it was another one of those dreams. His arm was still injured, and he remembers the arrow he took. The problem is that after that at the border, he doesn't remember much else. One of the army guys then says he arrived at the mansion, and he gets down. I find it funny, this is one of the few stories where the protagonist leaves, goes away, and comes back in like 1 or 2 chapters. In others, the characters go, they don't come back for 10. And now John is thinking that if it weren't for the weird dream, he would believe that nothing happened. But, his shoulder is injured. Nissen, he asks about remember, who already appears saying who would have imagined they had a spy all this time. Man, a guy is falling to the ground, he's about to say something, and he's stabbed and dies. With him saying that now he'll work for the dead. The guy comes to take the body and already warns that Dion had returned. Or says it's fine, he'll receive the boy and asks them to find out who this guy was working for. Oh, but the guy died, man. There's an information extraction from a dead person there, how will they find out? And if we see remember talking to our boy, who saw that he was injured, asked if he was okay. The protagonist says it's not much of a problem, and remember says he knows he uses his right hand, so of course, he'll be able to keep fighting. He says it smells weird because he just killed one of the spies, right, and got blood on his body. He tried to capture him alive, but there was a small incident. Oh boy, oh my god, not even remember is a good person. He's pretending there was a small incident. Right? Because clearly the guy was immobilized on the ground. Our boy literally has no peace and absolutely no place he goes, man. Jesus Trist. The butler asks if he found out who attacked him, and he says the people just died, so he didn't have a chance to find out, especially since, he doesn't remember anything. The butler says that apparently, whoever is behind this can't be underestimated. Besides, he thinks Doug Luster seems like one of the most likely culprits. Oh, now he's providing information here, which seems logical. I'm confused. However, regardless of the answer, Diver is alone, and it would be good to ask His Majesty for help. As soon as he says this, he also apologizes for meddling too much. John says it's okay, while thinking that he wanted to visit the Emperor anyway, to talk about handing over this empire here, which he doesn't want. The plan is to resolve this quickly and start living the peaceful life he's been dreaming of for a long time. However, at this, when our boy gets there, he discovers that the so-called Duke Luster, that damn stiff, is having a meeting with His Majesty. And answers that it's okay while being confused, right? He came to talk about this guy exactly, so what is he doing there? Well, at this moment, however, that other fake, Aletheia, comes with her idiot face, all emotional, calling our boy. The brother holds on, says hey to his friend, and our boy greets them. The weirdo obviously comes all radiant, saying they are friends. I want to trust that this guy is a good person, but obviously, I don't trust him, there are only scoundrels in this story. The sons say they can wait to talk to His Majesty. And now they are suddenly at a table with the weirdo clinging to his arm. Get lost, woman. And the protagonist is not happy at all. If he had known he would meet the two of them at this time, he would never have come. Yes. The guy comments that he drinks a lot of tea, right? If he wants a little, he'll bring it one. He's leaving. He replies that it's not necessary, but Aletheia tells him to try the cookie. Oh, hers, and puts it in his mouth. Man. Aggressive, this girl. Yes. The prince also tells him to be more careful. He heard that he went on a hunt, right, and messed up his body. The protagonist says it's okay. At this, Fidos asks him to take care of himself more because he doesn't want to become emperor, right? So what he has currently has to stay alive for a long time. The protagonist is all in the background, right? Because his plan is to stop serving this guy as quickly as possible and disappear from this place. Fidos explains that if he assumes the throne, it means something happened to Edward, and that's why he has no intention. As he should know, His Majesty is like a brother to them, and they want him to be happy. Though, I thought you were his children, son. You're all stubborn and fake, just like him. Now the protagonist explains, right, that it's impressive how the prince and princess adore their uncle the emperor. At this, he explains the strangeness of all this because the guy who is the emperor was the 9th prince. He not only killed all his siblings, killed his parents, killed the parents' children, killed the siblings of his cousins, the boy finished everyone. However, he left these two alive, who, even worse, like him and worry about him. At this, he talks about the first prince, who was Fidos's and Alethea's father, a different person from the rest of the royalty, a kind person, a fine guy. He took care of the 9th prince along with his children until the day he died. So apparently, he forgave him, right? Because they were kind of brothers, since his father took care of this scoundrel. Look at this beautiful family, it doesn't even seem like they're going to massacre everyone later. He says that if the first prince were alive, the 9th wouldn't have had to resort to violence like this. At this, he grabs the fake one's hand, telling our boy that they are counting on him, while she asks him not to put too much pressure on the young man. The protagonist just says he's going to the bathroom and leaves. The number 1 fake comments that he ran away, and the number 2 fake says yes. Clearly, the conversation was a bit too much for him. Phaedos feels bad because he was being sincere. This is because he knows that no matter how calm the emperor seems, there's a sword pointed at his neck. We see someone shouting that at this rate, that person will remain on the throne forever. They had to resolve this quickly because most nobles were tired, and justice had to be brought. For 2 years, this type of conversation has been directed at Phaedos. He's ignoring it, but clearly, this is only creating a certain threat. At the same moment, Letitia says that the emperor needs someone who is completely on his side. Dion is someone extremely talented, so it's a blessing to have him around, and that's why she's trying to seduce him. But like those contract signing letters, it's written very small. Don't misunderstand. I like him too. Really? I don't know though. Befo says it would be perfect if he became a beast loyal to his majesty. To the point that even if the noble pointed a sword at the emperor, Dill wouldn't hesitate to kill him. I can be honest, hesitating and killing doesn't seem like the boy's problem. Whoa, the protagonist is walking through the castle, looking for the bathroom. When suddenly someone opens the door, he recognizes him. The guy is startled. He approaches to understand why the guy is so scared and gives him a look, wanting to know if he by chance knows where they are. The human suddenly draws a sword and tries to attack him out of nowhere. Whoa, smack, our protagonist pulls his arm away, gets a cut while trying to understand why this weirdo was attacking when he just wants to know where the bathroom is. And man, the guy who fell to the ground was stealing documents and found it, right? He thought the little protagonist had caught him red-handed. What he can't believe is that he had the bad luck to run into Den hard. At this, someone comes, grabs him by the neck and lifts him. Man. It's Krule, man. Could there be an Tate situation happening? Like, they killed their parents because they needed to survive, and then he acted like the Demon King, Krule, the king. Could there be a fourth-dimensional chess thing happening? I just, thought of that. The protagonist is there asking what Krule is doing there, and the guy, wanting to know what he's doing there too. He sees the injured arm, starts strangling the human even more, who begs not to be strangled. At this, some papers fall to the ground, and when Dion goes to pick them up, the damn luster appears to take a look, and he comments that these seem to be very important documents. He asks if he's there to see the emperor, and the protagonist says yes. He just needs to have a little chat. The cross-eyed Stev comments that the boy managed to catch an infiltrator. Surely his majesty will grant any request. Especially because even though Krule lifted the person, he's sure the boy would have resolved it alone. Our banana heads seem worried, calling for Dion. My dear clingy one wants to know why he's bleeding, like always. Okay, the nose and shoulder. They're already calling the doctor. Pro says it must be from the fight. This Dev agrees. Probably the spy's weapon was poison. The protagonist is on the other side. He doesn't want anyone to discover that this is just his body, even though it's very weak. However, in the same second, there's a guy running desperately, saying he heard there's a patient here. However, upon seeing John Hart's face, he seems to become desperate. Man. This is because every time he has to treat this kid, the nobles all stare as if he makes a mistake, he will be killed. At this moment, the son wants to know about the poison, and he says it's just a scratch from Adeg. It's not even very deep. The prince grabs him and tells him to look to the right, because he was spitting blood. It looks like it was just any cut. Oh, someone appears, saying that the curse of the Demon King is Nemesis, and everyone greets him. Apparently, everyone knows that Dion visited the Demon King, at least everyone in the castle, right? And in memory, he already told him that he's there to pick up Dion, who needs to see the emperor. The protagonist, to get rid of all this, just says he can't keep that guy waiting and leaves, thanking everyone for their concern. Seeing him leave like that, without worrying, makes the sons believe that he doesn't even care about the demon mark, as it's an incurable problem. He's truly a resilient boy who kept everything to himself. At least the final part is actually true. From outside the house, Stave gets into the carriage. And the worst part is that paper he saw was the plan about the war that the king wants to start. He didn't imagine that this crazy emperor would start another one so soon. He really was getting slow. He'll give a little help in this part of the plan so he can also achieve what he wants. And the emperor praises him for catching the spy and asks if he got hurt, because he replies no. The guy, however, comments that he's sweating a lot. He, as one of the empire's most valuable assets, didn't need to hide how he felt. The protagonist replies that he'll keep that in mind. However, in reality, he's sweating coldly because ever since he took a beating, he hasn't said anything. He wants to go to the bathroom and hasn't been able to. At this, the emperor wants to know why he's there, and when he says it's about the hit region, the emperor cuts him off and replies that if it's about returning it, the answer is no. The protagonist is a bit confused. He didn't even get a chance to say anything. At this, he's going to talk about returning the army. The emperor says no to that either. He'll keep that troop, and he'll keep the castle for himself, and none of this will be passed on to the emperor. However, if he resolves a little favor, he can guarantee some other request. On the paper, Dion sees about the Church of Salvation, and the Emperor says it's a crazy cult that's growing and wants Dion to resolve it. The protagonist doesn't seem willing until the Emperor says that he'll then ask Krule and let him receive the wish. Then he gets up and says he'll resolve it. Then he notices that this damn Emperor always uses Krule to convince him to do what he doesn't want. However, he then comments that he and Krule actually receive the job, and whoever finishes first will win the wish. This was the competition. At this, James gets up seriously, saying the job will be finished faster than he thinks. No way he wanted to lose to that bastard Krule. I think my fourth-dimensional chess idea went too far, right? No way. A while later, our boy is drinking tea that lately only has this flavor. Because I said the prince himself sent it because he said he liked it a lot. Besides, he has to take the terrible medicine that the doctor there prescribed. They're having this chat when Alien enters, and the protagonist asks if she finished the investigation on the Church of Salvation. She hands him a paper saying that's the summary, but basically, they're giving bread and water for free without getting anything. Indifferent to other cults, it seems they don't have any kind of blind faith in the same leader. All they ask is for people to believe that salvation is coming. The protagonist finds this even more confusing. Giving away free food wouldn't be cheap, and they would have to have some nobles supporting them for something like this to work. However, the guys don't want money, and they don't have any religious leader. So, what do they want? Since he's been drinking tea the whole time, he gets up to go to the bathroom. However, she immediately asks if he's going to resolve this. Personally, she already tells him that it will be very dangerous and they will go together. The injured one doesn't understand what she's talking about, but we're already face to face with where, in theory, the Church of Salvation is. She takes a little outfit and tells him to put on a disguise because from now on, things get dangerous. The protagonist can't understand how again he just wants to go to the bathroom and was taken somewhere else. At this, he warns that he has things to resolve and tells her not to follow him. Apparently, he wants to pee in the alley, right man? However, someone always follows him. And the wretched woman tried to come up behind him. But he managed to disappear ahead of her. How? The police were relieved in the alley when he came out all calmly and noticed someone beside him. It was Krule, who, when he looked back, was startled and spat blood, lowering his head. Man, I thought the brother hadn't seen him, but he already attacked, and the human defended himself. Krule comments that an injured arm isn't enough to immobilize him. John thinks he's talking about that cut in the castle, but the guy grabs the other shoulder, squeezes it, and he has to retreat. At this, the protagonist wants to know how this damn guy knows he took that arrow. And Krule says that if he can move so much while injured, apparently they didn't do the job right. At this, he understands that it was this guy who sent someone to kill him. However, at this moment, Leon appears behind the alley, and the protagonist grabs her and pulls her away. She's more worried that the little protagonist is spitting blood, while Krule recognizes her as the captain of his knights. He already protects her and tells her to stay away. This is because he might have problems with Krule, and nothing will happen. However, if she attacks the famous hero, right, things could get complicated. Krule then asks if he wants to infiltrate the Church of Salvation. John Pass says he doesn't have to answer, but his brother warns that he'll be in danger if he gets too deep. Oh, but obviously, our boy wants to know why the person who orchestrated his assassination out of nowhere is now worrying about his safety. He's truly a brother who is too kind. A while later, looking at a paper, Krule says that if he had a few days left to live, he would be more concerned with living peacefully. The boy already had a weak body. The curse of the Demon King was still being attacked. He certainly didn't have much time. Wait a minute, my Ford chess makes sense now. Remember Krule tried to save him. I don't know though. At this, we see the protagonist attacking a pile of mud on his face, saying that no one can discover that they are nobles. Alien, however, is hesitating because the smell is terrible, and the protagonist already knew because she was born into a noble family. Now that the poor thing is suffering, he says it's impossible that the commander will abandon him alone. She said she would always be with him. At this, she takes all the things on the ground and passes them on her face too. The plan is for them to get very dirty so they look like poor people who need the church's help. And then he remembers that Krule warned him to put mud in his hair too. Oh damn it, I can't understand. One day then he tells her to hide the sword and follow him, because he would go ahead. Standing in front of the castle, there's a green-haired woman there whom I feel I've seen before. The silver-haired one approaches, but trips like a complete idiot and falls face down. The woman asks if he's okay, tries to help him up, saying he must be so hungry that he doesn't even have the strength to stand. His hand is immediately full of blood, which he spits constantly, and they help him inside. He, however, from afar, just gives a signal to Lion, who realizes his plan was perfect. He really looked like a poor, broken beggar. But when she tries to enter, the woman in front warns that they won't accept anyone else in today. She hands him a bread, a water, and tells him to eat and come back another time. She asks to wait, but it's too late. The woman noticed that she had an elegant aura, moved calmly and quietly. Surely it was some kind of noble or knight sent by someone. Luckily, our boy thought like an idiot. She's thinking exactly that. That man there next to him, poor thing, is so weak, skinny, looks like he hasn't eaten in many days. She brings a cup of tea, thinking there's no way to doubt it, that this one is from the alleys. He thanks her, she says she'll get some food. And John wonders why he hasn't seen anything suspicious at all so far. The place seemed like an ordinary temple, people seemed happy, and the guards were perfect paladins. However, the fact that it was so clean was the most suspicious part of all. At this, someone asks if he's not too hot, and he says no. He prefers to keep the cloak on. At this, she says that's even more reason for him to take it off and pulls the hood, revealing the disgrace of white hair and red eyes, right? The woman seems to be startled, but takes his face and comments on his red eyes. Strangely, he makes a little romance there, saying he knows she won't like it because they are too ugly. Not even his family liked it. So, you know. Obviously, strangers would have the same reaction. She, somewhat embarrassed, replies that they are not ugly. She asks if he has heard of John Hart, who is a person from the Empire who also has similar eyes. He, all crooked, asks if that's not a hero of the Empire. She says yes, but tells him to be careful. This kid was more of a bloodthirsty vampire than a hero. He stands there thinking that his reputation isn't good. She asks if he knows where this place is. He replies that he only heard that it's a place that gives bread and water. She says yes, this is the Church of Salvation, a religious organization created to save those who are suffering because of Edward. The Emperor is the reason everyone is in this miserable life. If he were a good person, no one would be going through this. The protagonist notices, right, that the Emperor is being criticized here. And she comments that he wouldn't have tripped in the muddy street if the Emperor had fixed everything and left it clean. However, he could rest assured that the Church of Salvation was different from all others. They didn't believe in anything like money, but only in salvation itself. This was even more confusing to him. It seems like a good thing, but in theory, there has to be some reason behind it all. He then asks if he becomes someone who believes, in what will he be saved? It was time to discover the truth behind it. However, there he is, walking through the church because she replied that he will find out when he becomes part of them. The problem for the boy is that so far, he hasn't found any true evidence. It doesn't seem like anyone poisoned the food, and everyone there was very calm. At this, suddenly someone hits his back, and upon turning around, a very cute girl, right, who I think was the one we saw at the beginning with her brother, isn't she? She asks if he's a new person there, and he says yes. They only notice that she seemed happy and healthy. She says her name is Tia, and says he must be having a difficult life, right, to have gone there, but he doesn't have to worry anymore. This place gave food, drink, and asked for nothing in return. He thanks her, pats her, says this is truly salvation. Then, while noticing that there are several guards around watching what he does, the kid in the corner calls for Tia, and tells her to come pray quickly. And the protagonist notices that this other weirdo is also staring at him as if wanting to kill him. The two withdraw as he tries to find a way to pass without being noticed by the guards. However, at the same moment, someone calls him, and from outside, Alan hears a strange noise. She's looking for a way to enter through the back, but she's not succeeding. At this, she sees some bread rolling on the ground and someone calling for security. She approaches and sees the green-haired woman saying they have an intruder. If it weren't for a hero, everyone would have been held responsible and replaced. At this, they think it's Dion, but maybe it's Krule. At this, someone is breaking down inside. Oh, it's Lynn herself who entered there, asking where Lord is. The little protagonist is hidden in a corner. He thought he was going to be caught for a second, but luckily someone else called for attention. A guy there offered him more bread. And he was the one who threw it through the window when she found it outside. At this, he's walking through the places where they do prayers. However, upon opening the curtain and looking to the side, he sees the priest with the woman next to him. Obviously, at that moment they ask, what is this? In fact, he had already disappeared, and they are only seeing the large open window. The priest tells them to clean everything quickly and ensure no one infiltrates this place. The woman, however, seemed to notice something suspicious. Oh boy, guys, behind the curtain, Krule is embracing our boy. Get lost, brother. Oh, damn it. The protagonist wonders why he found this weirdo here again. However, both are watching the green-haired girl, saying it's time to pray for salvation. All who were there and believed in him were destined people to follow the correct path. And instead of praying, she wanted to tell more about what true salvation is. The people are all excited, thanking her. And he explains that they will enter a room where only true believers can hear about it. At this, she leans against the wall, her arm goes through, and she says it seems normal, but they can enter there. At this, she tells everyone to pass through the portal, and obviously, they notice that it's some kind of magic. The two little children are going happily too, and at this, everyone passes Clearly that church has to have something suspicious because they are going to great lengths to hide what they do. In this the boys get loose there from the brother's supporter. Now I even miss the fake Princess Elatia. They argue for a second, and in the next they already have their hands on the wall trying to understand how to get through this. The silver one feels a jewel behind the wall and realizes that some kind of special magic. That there carried some kind of special, and it was something that humans learned in the war against the demons. It's just that unlike the devils, the human can't use special with such ease, so they kind of contain these crystals, which makes everything more suspicious. Why did this church have high-level magic like that? Protonha is eager to give up on this mission, it's just that it would cause Krule to receive a wish. Well, at that moment, someone opens the door saying that they have a problem and the boy has already hidden there. He runs by saying that he has to inform Saline as quickly as possible. He goes to the jewel, calls for it and warns that they have an intruder. Someone is destroying all the construction there, calling for Lord. Protonha has no idea, right, man. But in this, something on the guy's back is destroyed once more. Is coming wanting to know where he is. She grabs the guy who's wanting to know, right? Who is her lord by any chance? At that moment, Liz there thinking that she doesn't want to, right, reveal to which team she belongs and all that. However, she also can't use the words count or hero or it's going to be kind of obvious. In this, she says that her lord is her lord and the guy asks for the name, right, saying that he'll help find out if she says who it is. Obviously, she continues hesitating while Dion notes that the connection with the crystal was still activated. On the other side, Saline is listening to everything and recognized the voice from the moment she heard it. It's that suspicious knight who was at the gate before and now she's there looking for the lord, not to mention that a strange person with red eyes was in that place. Now she's sure it's Dion Hart himself. He imagined that he would also receive the Emperor's mission, it's just that he didn't think that he would come there alone, as we already imagined, right? Krule is all there calm with the so-called Celine asking how he got in. It's good for him to know that she isn't going to help, because she knows that he's there because of a test from the Duke. Not to mention that he's already received the most crucial information of all. Now I remember where I saw her, right, daughter? She's there from Staven's home, right? In other words, Krule is there just for fun. Then she leaves the room saying that it's a favor, since they work for the same master. It's just that she's going to strengthen security to ensure that John Hart can't go there either. What she never imagined is that the boy was going to casually cross the front door. In this she goes back to the pulpit apologizing for the interruption, and warns that it's time to return to the prayers while asking for that damn John Hart not to enter this place and disrupt the work. Everything was here according to that person's plans. Alanka, and the general, however, it seems that no one has any information. At that moment Protonha appears, calls her and tells her to stop making a mess, saying that first it was good for them to leave there, and then they solve it. Sheet, however, is crouching there, apologizing for not having been able to follow him. He says it was nothing, but she says that she was moved by his perfect acting to invade enemy territory. See the ability he has on the battlefield, and to acquire information, makes her swear forever that she's going to follow him. He's there a little confused because this weirdo is suddenly saying this in the middle of the mission. The only option for her to see if she gets up. He also pats his chest, says that he'll never betray her loyalty, and says that it's time for them to go because the mortal knights have an investigation to do. Oh, man, don't bring that bunch of crazies because they're going to kill everyone. 3 days later, he's in the castle wondering why it's so hard to find a sorcerer in this region. Of the almost 100 that exist in the Empire, 99 are there in the south region, it's just that they're in the north. He just hopes that Krule hasn't solved everything yet. Well, at that moment Remember enters and says that they found someone to remove that spell. Or rather, they found a place that might give them someone in less than a day. The scene changes for him on top of the mountain and in theory there's the city where there are some sorcerers. In addition, he's talking to him to rest because they came in a hurry, but they say that they have to find it soon before that person arrives. However, look at the wretched Krule walking and he's wondering how this damned one is already there again. A stone comes flying from nowhere and hits the protagonist's head. Oh my god. When he looks to the side, whoa, Krule was already in front, and it was one of the guys from the village who threw a woman who warns that disaster had arrived. It was good to kill him. It was to get this kid out of this village. Now Leona the Hour wants to know how she has the courage to address her lord like that. Hey, man. And Protonha wasn't happy either, asking what's this business of disaster. Oh, my daughter, you shouldn't have attacked that stone because now he's in demon mode, saying that he believes he's just a simple sinner. In fact, he calms down, thinking that this woman there has lost her head. But at that moment someone asks the sorceress to calm down, and then he notices that she's the person he's looking for. However, suddenly she grabs his arms and says that he can't hate anything. It was good for him to know that he couldn't hate anyone and not in absolutely anything in that place. Or else a terrible disaster would happen. He doesn't understand anything and pulls his hand away wanting to know why she's approaching him so much. At that moment another woman puts her hand on her shoulder and asks Grandma to calm down. Finally a woman appeared. Let's hope it's not another fake, right? Baya is telling her to take care with the disaster, but the granddaughter said that everything is fine and nothing will happen. It was not possible to judge people without even knowing who they are. But this someone says that he was waiting for him. She introduces herself as Han and apologizes to our boy. He says everything is fine, and at that moment she asks if he's not there to find a sorcerer. He has no idea how she knows, but she says that that's easy for a sorceress like her. The moment he thought about doing this, they already knew that he was coming because of the Church of Salvation. Oh my god, do the spells really work? Or is she working for that guy, right, who everyone is also in it? And now Dion is worried because if he doesn't accept this woman's help, that cruel weirdo is going to get involved with her. That's why, at the same moment, he grabs her hand and thanks her for everything she can do for him. However, Krule comes from them, thinks that he doesn't care if he gets a sorcerer. Even though the Duke told him to prove his worth, he knows that that guy wants his victory above all else. So soon he gets a sorcerer. He wants to talk to Vilya, but before he says anything, the weirdo appears and out of nowhere hugs him, saying that she saw him there too. Krule doesn't understand. The woman says that she knows that he's been through a lot. He doesn't have to worry because no one there hates him. She knows that in this world there's no one left who loves him. But he has to be careful because in this world those who don't have love have short lives. That's why he has to stay alive and win. Win the battle over who's going to stay alive longer one against the other. Even though he's the reason that the apocalypse is going to start, if he wins, the apocalypse won't happen. If he feels that he's about to die or that he prefers to die, he had to make sure that he kills that boy first. But this people from the village here are in the story too. It's not possible. Knows everything, and at that moment he puts the sword on her neck, saying that he knows how to take care of himself and telling her not to get close, while thinking that a long time ago he had already decided that he wasn't going to die before Dion. With our boy, however, he's asking if Run can also see the future. She said yes, and she can see his future even at this moment. He doesn't exactly understand how they knew that he was going to get there. And she explains that it's not exactly the future. She only knew that a certain boy with certain intentions would come to this village. While the two are chatting, there's a guy there watching the two, wondering who they are. Hanan then explains that she has to be careful when talking about a person's future. However, what she guarantees is that the hatred he feels is like a fire in the forest. It started small, but eventually it's going to get gigantic and consume everything in its path. And that boy is an explosive that will eventually cause all this. Is it this kid from the village there, man, who is now introducing himself as Tan, who is asking to go with Dion, saying that if he's really going to go through this disaster, he's going to need his help in the future. Danon tells about the day he discovered his destiny. The madam is attacked on the wall, and everyone asks if she isn't a sorceress. The boy is there confused, wanting to know what's going on, while the woman says that he really is a traitor who's going to serve that disaster. In other words, his grandma predicted that he was going to help someone devilish, and from that day on he started to be hated by everyone in the village, who called him disgusting. However, Dan couldn't understand what they were talking about. Rand told everyone to stop, and that was the only reason he managed to survive. What he didn't understand was how people who were once friends and neighbors suddenly all started to hate. And then he decided, son, since he was being hated by everyone because of this, when that disaster appeared, he was going to accept. And after waiting for a long time, finally the person appeared. The second he saw it, he was sure he had found the so-called disaster. I'm understanding where this is going. No, but I imagine that soon we're going to find out because the Prota is back home, and Dan is there with him. Alien says that it's a person he brought from the village. And Dan says that he didn't receive much education, isn't the exceptional fighter, but won't disappoint the master. The silver one is there wondering if he shouldn't send this guy away, but says that they'll talk about it later. This moment his priority was another mission. In this he says that they have everything prepared, and it was to gather the knights who were about to act. Dan asks if he's going, the boy says no. It's better for him to stay in the house for now. A guy with a grumpy face there says that everything is fine, but doesn't seem to have been happy. And the pro is wondering why this weirdo wants to follow him so much. He doesn't know the intentions. They find it extremely suspicious. Whoa, so why did you bring this weirdo? Ah, yes, right. Because the girl over there who sees the future must have indicated. But at night in the Church of Salvation, a fire started, and our guy's army entered together. He warned before that the plan was to set everything on fire and take this opportunity to infiltrate the place. Oh, and he gave the order. If you see someone suspicious, you have to kill them, man. They're saying even when our protein isn't devilish, he's not a good person, son. He kills without mercy. No. He was a good person. He told him not to use the drug that makes you lose your reason, and also not to kill any believers. The knights are thinking that it's going to be easier to cut down General. While everyone comments that it's strange, that the captain is normally brutal and now is so cute like that. But in this Han appears, and says that it was her who asked for it. They still don't know why they're going to shed so much blood. The guys are more curious still, right? When is that hour coming? She said that soon they'll know, and the guys are all excited saying that since it's like that they can count on them. With this we are in the church with everything being destroyed, people fleeing and those who tried to defend are dead on the ground. And obviously, as always, everyone recognizes this white uniform. The little girl there, the aunt grabs one of them and asks why they're doing this and tells them to leave there. She knows that they're there to destroy all this place and kill her too. This already asks them to please go to another place because she only had to stay there. Oh, man, the guy is already drawing the sword, saying that he's going to have to use it as an example. While Paulo, who is the little boy from the favela there, is calling for her, telling her to get away from this guy. He comes to give the sword, but suddenly the sword falls to the ground. Phew, I thought someone had stopped, but he put his hand on his conscience, right? Because without the drugs they can't be crazy. In the end, he knows that this place is the last hope of these people, and they prefer to die seeing everything fall apart. But on the outside, those who fled know that who's causing that is the Emperor's sword, Dion heart. And now they swear that they will never forgive the Emperor for taking away the paradise they had. Inside the prayer room, Ran is looking at the crystal saying that the special there was kind of different. It was something to create communication and distortion of space. When suddenly a magic circle appears and she gets a fright saying that this, in fact, was a spell disguised as a spell. Ah, that's because magic should be something that only demons can do. At that moment, Jan comments that that's impossible, right? Because they're in the area of the humans, and she says that she found it suspicious as soon as she took a look, but she's sure that that's only activated by magic. Which at that moment makes you wonder if the Demon King knows this. And she asks for more time saying that she's going to try to understand the structure and perhaps eventually manage to open this. The pro, however, finds it difficult for a sorceress to understand a magic that is much more complex. This would only be possible if she was extremely skilled. And apparently that's the case, right, since she managed to open it. It's just that the same reaction he saw with that green-haired woman from before, right? So she's not normal either. With the place open. However, he says that it's time to enter. It's just that as soon as the three enter, it seems that they're kind of in the same place. However, he says that it's not the same thing. Clearly there's a magic circle there covered in some sigils. And apparently that's protecting a door on the other side. At least this door was only opened, and they come out in a forest. Liana is confused and comments that it's probably a spatial connection. Probably that spell above connects this door to some other place. In other words, the moment they crossed that crystal, they fell into the church that's in this other location. And he asks if she knows what kind of spell this is. And she says that, unfortunately, she has no idea how this magic works. That's because the door can lead to different places and kind of you have to solve the spell so you don't end up in the wrong forest. It's a bit confusing, but she said that she needs 10 minutes to solve the correct path. He just hopes not to find Krule again on the correct path while walking from side to side wondering if there's nothing he can do. Alien realizes that he seems a little anxious and suddenly pulls a ladder and tells him to rest there. But strangely it's when she notices that he disappeared. She starts calling for the boy and in this the pro sees himself face to face with Krule in a hallway. Meanwhile, from the home outside the whole church is in flames. Silen, who is sitting outside, realizes that the common people are being evacuated and soon they'll find out who's behind this. For her, that was a bad strategy. If she could, she would seal everyone and kill everyone in there. It's just that now that Ji's involved, the priority is to take these evidences far away. The boy needs to know who's behind all this to be able to end the organization. It's just that she's going to make sure that he'll never get what he wants. Strangely, she's carrying these papers, but Krule is there with a torch about to burn. Others. And as soon as John says that they always meet when they shouldn't, the guy lets go of the torch. Obviously, everything starts to burn. The silver one asks what he's doing, is going to try to stop him, but the brother grabs his fist. He asks if Krule is an idiot, because he also received the mission and there were evidences. And the problem is that now that he's in the good version, he doesn't have all the courage to simply go out and cut the brother, who strangely is throwing him in his lap there and walking away. Oh Perchinha, let's go crazy in there, tear him in half. While he's hitting his back, he's wondering who's behind the whole church. There aren't many people in the empire who would orchestrate something of this size. And in this he wonders who is the most powerful person among the royalty whose symbol is purple and who also Krule works for. Obviously, all this is the damned Stave Luster. Suddenly he changes his expression saying that the bastards are playing with him. At that moment, he gives him an elbow in Krule's face, but he doesn't seem to react much. That and this throws the boy into Alan's arms there who asked if he's okay. Perchinha is in hatred, but Krule just says that if he wants to continue living, it's better not to talk about what he saw there today. And we're now with our boy in bed after the bandages. He's only thinking about that document that Krule kept in his shirt. Now that he knows that Stave Luster is behind all this, he realized that from the beginning he had no chance of winning. In this, Ul enters the room and says that Ran has already left. Perchinha gets a little discouraged, but at the same moment Remember already enters and says that he has a visit. Man, I'm saying, the boy's life doesn't stop for a second. He sends greetings to Count John Hartem from the Emperor. Unfortunately, as he didn't win, right, now he's going to have to accept the punishment. The next chapter begins with Eduardo waking up in bed startled. Since he ascended to the throne, he has never been able to sleep with tranquility. This is because all the people he killed come to torment him at night. And the worst thing is that now even when he wakes up, these souls continue to look, saying that they hate him, wanting to know why he's the only one who continues alive after having done this with everyone. While he's suffering there, grabbing his own neck, enters and calls for his uncle, warning that Dion and Krule had arrived. And he asks if he's okay, because he's all pale. Apparently, it must have been another nightmare. The Emperor, however, just tells him to get out of there right away. It was Fides, however, who noticed that he wasn't looking exactly at him and instead at things beside him, which is a little strange at that moment. He wants to know if he's hallucinating or something like that, because he replies that that doesn't affect his life on a day-to-day basis. The son is wanting to call the doctor, but the Emperor tells him to relax. All this was just a little stress because of the preparation for the war. He had no intention of getting rid of all this, because no one needs to know more. He liked to see these hallucinations, and he tells the boy not to worry, that it was nothing much. And strangely, however, he wants to know until when he's going to carry this guilt. He had already given restitution to all the families of the victims and also cared so much about everyone that he knew each one's name like the palm of his hand. Oh my god, what is it? The Emperor did the Ateti. It's him who killed everyone because it was necessary. The Emperor, however, says that it wasn't the accounts, that this isn't normal, since those people would still be alive if it weren't for him. He withdraws, warning that the 8-year war was his decision. So the blood of everyone, both allies and enemies, is in his hand. This was a weight that he would carry as long as he was the Emperor. However, he didn't care, since he has so much to do that he wouldn't be defeated by that. The scene changes for our protagonist there, a little confused, facing Krule who's always facing him back. They stay there hating each other until the Emperor appears to welcome both of them. They greet him and the pro is strange. An Emperor seemed a little angry, considering that the mission that was given was fulfilled. In this, Eduardo tells them to lift their heads and says that he learned that they completed everything. In addition, he learned that Count John Hart was a little too merciful, because he was sparing the lives of many of the people who were directly involved. On the other hand too, he was the only one who mobilized troops to capture the people. But in the end it was Krule who brought the evidence that made it clear who was behind this. Both did a good job, but it's Krule who's going to receive the wish, since he played a crucial role. The Silver One already knew this and Krule thanks him. The Emperor tells him to make the request, and at that moment he asks for our boy's county, saying that he knows that currently it's the day that he's with the honorary possession. I'm saying, this brother is a bit etadizo, man. The Emperor then comments that it's a surprise. But will John accept this? Obviously, the pro is crazy to say that hell no. He prefers to die than to hand over. However, he says that in reality, right, this has only become one more job for him. So, if he can take it out of his hands, it's perfect. The Emperor then comments that everything is fine, it's just that to have a place like that you need a title. The Heart House to which he is linked already exists, so he can't receive the same title. He would need a new last name, or a new title. So what does he prefer? Apparently, Krule lost the title as part of the Heart, when our boy took control of everything. The Emperor also offered him to change his name, to take the heart from the end, but he wanted to keep it to remember the revenge. This is because his plan was to destroy the family with his own hands. Wait, I'm understanding. It's because there can't be two honorary counts in the same family. The Protot, however, thinks that this is really going to be the best choice for him. Krule, however, says that he has no interest in changing the final name and also has no interest in inheriting the things of the Heart House. The pro thinks this is strange because unlike his honorary noble, being the name Heart, you really have a great history behind it. At this moment there are only the two of them as descendants, but the position of true leader isn't occupied. I thought it was him who was occupying, but it's because he's acting as an honorary. True. What the pro wonders if he's refusing, because he wants to end the bloodline of the family. But it also doesn't make sense because he doesn't want to change the last name. The Emperor replies that he made the same choice. They were really brothers. In this that Emperor suggests then to hand over that region to the Duke and Luster. This way he wouldn't need a title, right? But still manage, since the guy would leave him in command. He accepts, and at that moment the Emperor tells him to leave. But he says, they could continue there, that they have things to solve. The pro wants the wretched one to continue now because he knows that something is going to be left over for him. But only the two remained, and the attention is in the air. The protagonist is thinking he'll be punished, while the Emperor notices he seems a bit stressed. Perhaps it was because he lost that dominion. He wishes the boy would speak up more instead of holding back. Then, in reality, he reveals that they'll soon start another war. This Church of Salvation was decimated at the perfect time, and it's time to deal with the Iron Rain, which has been annoying for some time. The protagonist asks if he'll really start a war with those guys, and he says this is just the first step. However, man, not even the nice version of Diamond wants war. He's already tired of it. The kid went through 8 years of the last one. Anyway, the king says he'll be in charge of dealing with the demon realm. This is because the king wasn't going to stand by while he conquered the entire continent. And that's why his mission is to stay by that guy's side, and ensure he doesn't interfere in the war. Well, better than having to advance in the war bathing in blood every day. The emperor thanks him, then touches the mark and says that the next time they see each other, it's better if he's without it. Our boy just accepts, saying he'll try to do that while wondering why this guy wants to remove the mark if he's not going to let the boy retire anyway. Well, at least he'll be thrown back to the demons, where those two seem to genuinely like him, unlike the weirdo Alitia. The scene shifts to Krule, who informs Stevluster that he received the Heart County as a reward. However, at that moment, the Count comments that it's the last time he saw Dion, the boy who commented that he wanted to return that place, and now he wants to know if Krule didn't take that as a reward because of his brother. Fra, however, replies no. There just weren't many things he wanted. It seems Stev isn't quite believing this and apologizes, saying perhaps he's stressed because of the meeting he'll have shortly. He tells Krule that it's okay, especially since he's responsible for what he received as a reward and congratulates him on the hard work he's been doing. However, did anything else happen that he needs to know about? Krule says no. This is because he's hiding that the protagonist discovered the whole truth, that it was Stev behind everything. Even though he avoided the boy getting involved, he ended up discovering it. And now the problem is that things will get complicated with Stev if he finds out he let you know. At this, the guy is leaving the room and tells him to come quickly, as they'll be late. While his brother stays there thinking that he has to ensure Stev doesn't know that John has any idea about all this. However, he's just staring at the shadow of our boy there, man. Strangely, he's acting like this because he's afraid Stev will kill Dion. I thought, the danger was the boy. From outside the house, he praises Silen's work with the church. She thanks him and tells him not to worry, that they still have many believers, and will soon achieve what he wants. Now we'll see the true objective of these damned people. Actually, it's a very basic objective, right? As they receive bread and water, she informs them from time to time that their sponsor is Duke Luster. With this, he starts to be seen somewhat like a messiah who is saving the poor, while everyone increasingly hates the emperor. The plan was to make all the church followers see the emperor as someone who abandoned them, while the duke would be everyone's savior. I can be honest, the emperor isn't even trying to manage his image, so this mission is somewhat easy. And Seelin says she'll continue working hard. The scene then shifts to a meeting where everyone wants to know why they were suddenly called. Stev, seeing the discussion, thinks they are a bunch of idiots. They should know that if they were all called, it's because of that one thing, the current emperor's strongest point. Another war was coming. And they were really called by the emperor. Right. I thought it was like a secret meeting, but no. He was the one who summoned everyone. As soon as he enters, everyone rises, giving glory to the empire. He tells everyone to sit, saying he knows they are all busy, so he'll get straight to the point. From today onwards, they will declare war. Obviously, the nobles are all desperate, right? Saying that it's only been 2 years since they came from the 8-year war. He says the war only ended because no one else was challenging their authority. However, it seems the enemies have forgotten their place in 2 years. The friend next to him says yes. The Iron Rain is somewhat disrespectful, but you can't start another war just because of that. There are other ways to resolve it. The emperor, however, says it's not just Irian, there are more people who aren't taking their strength seriously. Elsewhere, some turbaned men comment that Mr. Din Hart was injured. The famous vampire count might be out of the game. At this, the blue turbaned man says that if the demon was injured, it was time to end that empire. Difficult times create heroes, and after an 8-year endless war, 3 survive. Obviously, the most famous is the protagonist, and the emperor comments that the boy's existence is enough to break the enemy's spirits. However, the name John Hart isn't the only thing the empire carries, and it was time to show this to the continent. The objective from the beginning was to dominate the entire region, and it was time to follow this plan again. The nobles hesitate, saying it's still too early. They had to deal with the revolutionary army, and it was extremely risky to pull troops from the castle at this moment. The emperor then comments that it's precisely for this reason that everyone was brought here. He's looking for a solution to this problem. People will say something, but then he hits and says they are forgetting that he is the empire, and he decides what happens. Any rejection from this moment on would be seen as a direct insult to him. At that moment, everyone falls silent, and he says the war is confirmed. It would be good for them to bring a solution to deal with the revolutionary army for the next meeting. Yes, that's easy, right? Announce the war and tell the guys to resolve everything. I would also be against this damn thing. And now the nobles are leaving, commenting that this was a matter of time. This war edict was eventually going to do it. The emperor then calls for Duke Luster, and comments that it was revealed that the person who was running the Church of Salvation was someone who constantly met with him. The Duke apologizes, saying he was blamed for not managing his people correctly. However, at that moment, the emperor puts a sword to his neck. I wonder if he really thinks he's an idiot. This emperor killed 8 siblings, and he already wants to know if the guy really thinks he's a merciful person. The illustrious one replies no. The emperor says he also heard something interesting, something about him being a sinner and the great Duke Luster's being salvation. The guy says it must be a conversation of crazy people, ignorant people. And the emperor agrees, saying he's much more of a disaster than a sin. However, at this moment, Luster tells him to stop it because he knows that his majesty cannot kill him. However, Edward says he must have forgotten that he is the last remaining ducal lineage in this region. The illustrious one comments that even so, he knows he cannot be killed. This is because if another noble dies by his blade, the remaining ones won't want to support this next war. The emperor laughs, draws his sword, and says those guys who call him a sinner are wrong. At this, the illustrious one is already running through the hall, thinking that to rip the emperor's power, he first has to finish off whoever protects him. It was time to start acting. We then see the silver-haired one talking to his sons, who asked if he's going to the demon realm. Dion has no idea, but how does this guy already know? He tells the boy not to be so tense. He talks to the emperor every day, so obviously, he knows most of the secrets. And at this, he says that the protagonist must also know, right, that the emperor is eager to start the next war. And the order is that if the demon king wants to start a war against them, he has to return immediately, right, to help defend. This was the final rule. No matter what happens. The very evil Dan says he'll keep it in mind. And Ifio gets up, saying he's grateful for his hard work. Damn him, he wants to order our boy around, man. He didn't even use his little sister to convince the boy. Alone in the corridor, Phaos is resentful because the guy is not only extremely strong in the human world but also one of the commanders there among the demons. He doesn't know what the emperor has in mind, but he has to remember that Dion can extract at any moment. That's why he tries to maintain a friendly relationship, but his personality doesn't make things easy. At this moment, the most honest and truthful girl in history wants to know how the meeting with Dion went, because he says it was a good thing, and she didn't even need to participate. Besides, she has to focus on becoming the crown princess soon. She says it's annoying, she doesn't want it, but he tells her to wake up. As second in line for the throne, she has responsibilities. Etia says he seems very anxious and stressed, probably because of all this about a new war, and the revolutionary army. Suddenly she grabs his hand, tells him to come along and puts him there to have some tea, saying that from time to time he also needs to rest a little. At this, Phaos reveals that his uncle is having hallucinations. It was about the people he had killed, so it's strange that he still feels tormented by it. Strangely, the son is thinking that, as wrong as it is for him, Edward was someone precious, and he wouldn't mind the whole world being against him for that person. He comments that no doctor knows what the illness is, and she says it's obvious, it's guilt. Amidst the flames, the emperor turns and warns that he will take responsibility. At this, Edward says that Alitia needs to understand that they don't have time. The moment he discovered about the hallucinations, he made preparations to assume the emperor's position, and they are almost ready. He will do his best in the meantime, and she should focus on her studies. Oh boy, in other words, he just said he wants to protect the emperor, but apparently he wants to take his place. While saying that back then when they were saved, they were already young, and being young in that palace was a sin. I guess because, you know, everyone was killed. Meanwhile, John is at home, wanting to know how much the prince knows and what the emperor's intention was in having that boy deliver that message. At this, Dan. We don't even know why he's in this story. He's by his side, wondering why the boy seems so stressed after talking to the emperor. The protagonist then asks if he has anything to say for standing there the whole time. He says yes, and that he's interested in starting to earn money. It wasn't for charity or anything like that, and he was willing to give all the profits to the protagonist. At this, our boy approaches and says that from the moment he saw him, he was wondering about his intentions. No one follows a stranger without any reason. However, now he comes with this business of earning money and giving it all to him. Either his objective was to create false trust, or it was truly to serve him. However, he doesn't care about either. He hands him a paper, telling him to follow it, and eventually, he'll earn money. Now, whatever he wants to do, he shouldn't get in his way. Okay, so right. Our boy is leaving, apparently. Let's go to the demon realm again. However, the entire troop is coming, saying he can't leave without saying goodbye. Remember apologizes, he tried to prevent it, but the boy was discovered. But our boy, son, pulls up his hood, throws it, and rides off, waving goodbye to everyone. One of them tries to pass to follow the boy, but Remember pulls him off the horse. They all stumble over each other, fall, and are left behind. Ellen apologizes for letting them escape while they are all praying that the boy survives once again. Remember, as always though, right? He notices someone from the Revolutionary Army out of nowhere. Oh look, he's smiling. Whoa, I'm saying this guy is behind all of this. Oh, the damn life of our boy. You can't trust absolutely anyone alive in this place. At least in the demon realm, they seemed more honest, right? Because look, he's returning, and now he'll suffer an ambush from the damned, who obviously will all be cut and tortured. The next chapter starts at the Revolutionary Army barracks, and it seems one of them asks why they're only going to act after the Emperor has taken half the continent. Steve says that's the plan. However, the guy who is the captain of the revolutionaries, named Daniel, says he needs to know why something like this. Steve replies that it's because the war has to be at its peak, when the Emperor can no longer end it at will. Only at that moment will they act. Probably he'll have to divide the forces and advance on numerous fronts, including the Imperial Palace. All places will have minimal defenses. Daniel says he understands the obvious, right? When he has few defenses, it will be easier to kill everyone. And Steve praises his astute conclusion. Truly a genius. It's when someone opens the door and informs him that John Har left suddenly. Daniel celebrates, and Steve says it's a great opportunity. You never know what to expect from that lunatic. At this, the captain thanks Steve for his help and says he'll put someone good and dumb to know what's happening. He immediately withdraws, saying he'll resolve it while Steve just smiles, knowing that it's more than obvious that any soldier sent to hunt Dion Hart would die. Yes, right, the obvious happened, and the first one was cut down not by our boy, but by another troop that was protecting him, and then they were also killed. It seems these guys are following His Majesty's orders, but they were also killed. Whoa, man, Krule is following the guys who are following the guys who are following our protagonists. In other words, Steve and the Revolutionary Army are somewhat against each other too, right? The guys just don't know it yet. His plan is to leave the Emperor without information about John. This way, he'll become more anxious and perhaps make wrong decisions in the war. On the other hand, Krule's mission is to find out where his brother is going. I thought these guys knew, right, that our boy is friends with demons, but apparently not. The scene then shifts to the church, where everyone is abandoned, and Tia is crying in front. Paulo is blaming himself, saying he shouldn't have introduced her to this place of salvation. Even though they were starving, they should have been more cautious, especially considering that it only created hope that was soon taken from both of them. Then he tells her that he's going to join the Revolutionary Army. He wants revenge on the Emperor who took all the happiness they had. He extends his hand, asking if she wants to join him. However, man, compared to the last time she accepted, she stays quiet. He says it's okay, then he'll resolve it alone, since she wants to be abandoned. Then he looks back and remembers that you can make friends, but you can't get too close. He should follow his own advice more closely, so he wouldn't get close to Tia. But now she's crying, right, saying it's too late, he can't turn his back on him. Meanwhile, in the most peaceful place in this story, the Demon King's castle, the girl who at least loves him honestly, Lylin Nell, misses him, wanting to know when the commander will return. The person there, however, wants to know until when they will wait for him there. However, at this, the girl leaves on her broom, saying she feels a strange presence approaching. She approaches the gate and becomes all excited to see the strong one arriving, who is looking at her. She explodes in front of him, all cute, saying she missed him. She wants to know how the mission went. He reacts with him, but inside he was scared to death by this girl exploding out of nowhere. He just replies that it was a bit exhausting, but he resolved the thing about that weird religion and stuff. Lylin, however, has no idea what the word religion means. He says it's a group of people who follow another, just like they follow the Demon King, right, with all their heart. She says it's a bit stupid, you can't choose who to follow like that. Besides, they would be better off following Jin or instead of anyone else. Just like in the Church of the Demons, he asks what she's talking about. She, however, changes the subject, says it's nothing major and wants to know if he's not going to talk to the Demon King. He, at this moment, was in the central garden. It's implied that perhaps there are people who adore Dion. Yes, obviously there are in the demon realm, right? They're not all there, but at least it seems like honest love. And in the center of the garden, a meeting is taking place between the Mermaid Queen, the Fairy King, the Vampire Queen, and the Dwarf King. And everyone already knows that the king will start a war with the Empire. This region of the continent known as the Abyss has not only demons but all other races. And the Demon King comments that they didn't know they were so interested in humans. The Fairy King says that obviously, they have to be cautious. The moment the Empire has the rest of the continent, they will be the next target. And since humans and demons are always at war, he doesn't expect the other races to be involved in all of this. The king replies that he's quite bold to say something like this, but the time is perfect, especially since his informant from the human realm has just arrived, Captain Demon Array. Only this kid, right, to be walking around with the Emperor. Then he comes to talk to the Demon King. He's living everywhere in the world. And the Demon King is already all excited, wanting to know if he had a good trip, marking that thing on his chest, saying he has a lot to talk about. Before the boy can say anything, he also wants to know if it's true that the emperor wants to conquer the rest of the continent. John says yes, when suddenly the elf interrupts, saying he heard about the informant. However, would anyone at that table trust a human? I also find it suspicious that everyone trusts him, but we know the Demon King has a card up his sleeve. At this, the king says they can rest assured. As long as he's here, everyone can trust Din. Our boy realizes, right, that if at any moment he turns his back, he will surely become a target for everyone there. At this, the king wants to know what orders he received from the emperor. He's a bit hesitant to say this in front of everyone, right? But since he asked, he says, the order the emperor gave is that the moment the Demon King starts to get involved in the war, he should try to interfere with everything. And if he decides to go 100 for the war, Dion should return to the humans and help them defend. The protagonist throws the fourth, dimensional informant. Instead of trying to hide and play psychological games, he just tells everything, and then no one suspects anything. The Demon King replies that he already expected that, right? It's more or less the obvious action. Until Dion says he found magic in the human realm. He was investigating a religious organization called the Church of Salvation, and one of the seals of that place was using some strange magic. The Demon King thanks him, and tells the boy to rest for now. However, Dee noticed that this should be news that would shake the Demon King. But he didn't seem curious or angry, which was strange. At this moment the doctor appears from the house, calling for the boy, who is startled, spits blood as usual, and at that moment says he'll take care of him, taking the boy away. The Demon King, however, is just staring, while the Elf King questions if he's not going to research this. Which demon dared to use magic in the human realm, without him having any idea? And he already accuses the Demon King himself of ordering something like this, but he tells him to be quiet and be careful what he says. Lauren hits the table and tells him to be careful, as his race is sensitive to changes in the world, and he can feel that a hero will soon be sent, someone different from anyone else who has ever existed, and it's a threat to the entire region. However, the Demon King just says he has no fear of that. When the time comes to deal with this hero, he will deal with it. Not to mention that he's a bit bored, and it's time for something to happen in this place after so long. The elf then replies that it's fine, after all, he's the one at risk of having a sword stuck in his chest. With this, all four kings start to leave with the beautiful vampire queens, without saying a word. They are all whispering, realizing that they can't count on the Demon King and thinking about having a conversation among themselves, when suddenly the Demon King asks why they are not showing any respect. He wouldn't accept this kind of insolence from an elf king who ran away. The guys are all almost fainting, unable to breathe, but he says he will forget about all of this, especially since they are a bunch of children. This time he will let them go, but it's best for the elf king to be careful about what he thinks. Meanwhile, the protagonist is walking down the corridor. The doctor wants to help, but he tells him not to bother him. He remembers that since the boy arrived, he's been like this. Son. Whenever there's blood, the Demon King sends him to help, but the boy never accepted any treatment properly. Somehow he always failed in his service of taking care of the effects of the war he had with the hero. However, John tells him not to worry, that he won't be killed. He didn't do anything wrong and could go back to taking care of other jobs. Strangely, because he doesn't accept any treatment, the doctor swore that he would eventually find a cure for the problems he has. And he asks the boy again to let him do a checkup. The protagonist gets scared when he approaches, but the doctor shows a magic stone that combines his blood with the Demon King's blood, warning that if the boy feels anything, he just has to say it, and this thing will accelerate his blood flow and help him recover much faster. But this only worked, unfortunately, when he was within the demon realm and close to the king's powers. The protagonist replies that it's not necessary, but at this moment, he runs into Ed. I'm telling you, the boy doesn't rest for a minute. He's there looking at the boy from all sides, saying he'll scold the doctor for not taking good care of the boy. At this moment, Ryan also appears, saying he wants to talk to our boy privately. Luckily, Ed already appears and pulls him away, telling him to let him rest. What's this? He threw him against the wall, telling him not to talk casually with the commander. The poor guy apologized, saying he had already met John before and even showed him the garden, and now he had brought a little gift, this cute and energetic plant. Obviously, Ed says he's not going to want this atrocity. Ian just asks him to show it, and he replies that it's fine and tells him to leave. At this we see Dan a little before, right? He told Ed that he didn't need to kill because he did nothing wrong. It was because of this, right, that he sort of just accepted it, took the plant, and went to take it to our boy, who is now seeing this monster on the bed screaming like a weirdo, singing a little song in front of him. The creature, however, was scary. He gets startled and retreats, saying this damn thing will end up killing him. However, in this retreat, a stab hits the side of his head, and he wonders if the plant attacked him. However, someone enters the room, saying he never disappoints. It's amazing how he sensed the presence of this dagger. I am telling you, the demon realm is much better for the boy, man. This is the commander of the 2nd Division, known as Devolnia. And playfully, she puts her hand to her mouth, wanting to know how he dodged something thrown by a specialist in infiltration, invisibility, and assassination. However, is there thinking that he just didn't get startled because he was more worried about the little plant in front of him than this weirdo. And she's there wanting to know how she was noticed, if it was a perfect attack. Nissen asks if he noticed her hostility towards him. However, obviously, she wouldn't have all this courage, especially since she knows that at any moment he can go crazy and kill her. She asks him to calm down a little, and says she brought a lot of gifts for the boy. Apparently it was a lot of clothes, and she makes him try them all on there. I didn't understand either. Suddenly the masked guy enters, apologizes, saying he was knocking, but no one answered. He said he heard he was back and came to pay his respects, but he stumbles and falls to the ground. At this, someone with green hair, who is the assistant to the 8th commander named 9, comes to help. The protagonist is confused about what the hell is happening in his room. And at this, Devolnia leaves with a goodbye, but stops at the door and tells Commander Hell that she heard there's an idiot talking about the commander in the first city. Strangely, the commander falls to the ground, and the assistant 9 tells her to stop acting like that with him. The protagonist just wants these crazy people out of his room urgently. The 8th commander, who is cited as the defendant, is a person born from the Demon King's own shadow. Originally he was the castle guardian, but as they expanded, he ended up receiving a secret mission. He was responsible for preventing any demon from leaking information about the protagonist's appearance, from any demon commenting on it or even in the hero's fight. He was the person responsible for ensuring that no one knew Din's appearance. Or in this case, right, the demon Irati. It wasn't by coincidence that no one in the Empire to this day knows the commander's appearance. At this, the so-called 9 talks to her in one of the rooms, saying that it's good that he once again managed to keep the information safe. He asks if he can try to talk to John now, and 9 says yes, that surely the boy will thank him for everything he's been doing. The protagonist is finally relaxing in his room with his cube when the guy appears there, giving him a look. He gets startled, and the defendant says he was just there, right, to pay his respects and tell him about everything that's been happening. Because of the fright, the protagonist spits blood as usual, and then the doctor opens up, asking if he's feeling well. The weird defendant already wanted to take his own life, saying he made the commander suffer, but both tell him to stay still and not do that. Dion tells this guy to go back to his usual work while wondering why this defendant was the only demon in the entire realm who looked at him in a somewhat calm way, as if he could kill him easily. Considering that the guy was the Demon King's shadow, he wasn't weak. This doctor then withdraws, and he's finally alone for a second in the room, thinking that now he remembers what life was like living in the Demon King's castle. Now that he's official, perhaps he should start acting as a double agent, just as the Emperor wanted. And this was the beginning of the end of the Demon King and of this video. Folks, we finished with not many answers. Oh, damn it, I wanted to continue, but I've already narrated 3 hours of this, and I'm still all in doubt. I still think my theory is right. The Demon King knows our boy is a double agent. The Emperor also knows, but both think they are manipulating the boy. Krule is like Itachi, right? A brother who pretends to be evil but is good. Our boy's possessed personality has some mega plan going on, while his innocent version, right, is just going back and forth suffering without understanding anything. Or maybe not, right. That one is already playing the 5th dimension and playing against the evil personality. Oh boy, heaven. Impossible. The only thing that's certain is that this work has many more chapters. It's chapter 38, there are almost 80, but for me to bring more, it has to do well. And for you not to miss it, what are you going to do? Activate it. Although